reconvene the meeting and welcome you to tonight's meeting of the Coeur d'Alene School District 271 Board meeting for May 1st. Would the gentlemen please remove their hats and everyone rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so before we get going tonight, I'd like to introduce our participants for this evening. I'll start to my far right. We have Mr. Brian Wallace, Director of Finance and Operations, Miss Lynn Town, Clerk of the Board, Dr. Trina Cottle, Acting Superintendent. To my immediate left is Mr. Dave Eubanks, Trustee, Mrs. Krista Hazel, Trustee, Mrs. Tamber Pickford, Trustee, and Mr. Tom Hearn, Trustee. My name is Casey Morrisroe, and I'm our board chair. Public comment on district-related items is scheduled near the start of this meeting. Please sign in on the sheet provided at the entrance door. Because of the diversity of issues, members of the board will not respond to public comment made during tonight's meeting. Instead, issues may be recorded and referred to the proper staff person for follow-up. Comments may also be submitted to the board in writing through the clerk. Thank you. Okay, is there a motion to approve tonight's agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries, Ms. Town. Is there a motion to approve the minutes for April 3rd, April 12th, April 17th, April 21st, and April 27th?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Motion carries, Ms. Town. Trustee Eubanks, you have our Invest, Inspire, Innovate Awards tonight.
Yes, do we have any photographs up on the screen, John? Oh, there we are. Okay, yeah. Hey, together with Panhandle Kiwanis and the Coeur d'Alene Education Partnership, the Coeur d'Alene School District recognizes 3 outstanding educators every school month, along with at least 1 classified employee. These terrific people go way above and beyond in helping our community's children, and it is my pleasure to recognize our most recent honorees at this time. And up there on the screen, we have first and not foremost, but they're all foremost, but we have Julie Leonard, who is the March Invest, Inspire, and Innovate Award recipient. She teaches special education at Woodland Middle School. And next we have Trish Freeman, elementary teacher at Bora Elementary School and outstanding educator for March 2017. And then we have Kirsten Pomerantz, English teacher extraordinaire at Lake City High School, a March Invest, Inspire, and Innovate Award winner. And then we have Janae Wyrick, health occupations instructor. Basically, it's beginning nursing at K-Tech. What a wonderful opportunity, what a wonderful school, what a wonderful educator. And then we have, and she is for April of 2017. And then we have Annette Brennan, science teacher, Lakes Magnet Middle School, who, by the way, was hired the same time I was, a long, long time ago. And she's still there, wonderful teacher, April 2017 award winner. And then we have, a terrific educator, Nancy Mueller, music teacher, Winton Elementary School, the Invest, Inspire, and Innovate Award winner for April 2017. And here we have Shining Star Award winner. This is an outstanding classified employee award, and this goes to Shannon Dodd, special education paraprofessional. This goes back to February of this year, and she's at Canfield. Then we also have Allison Modine, building secretary, nutrition services department, March 2017. There she is with Mr. Ed. Okay. And then someone I've known a long time in the district as well, Ken Henry, electrician. Always, when I was a shop teacher a long time ago, I'd have electrical problems periodically, and Ken was always the one who could come in and get her fixed right away. And I appreciate that. Nice seeing him in this batch. And then we have another Nutrition Services Award winner for May of 2017. Boy, this came out fast. And Shining Star Award winner Marge Peterson and Coeur d'Alene High School. So let's give it up for all of these wonderful people.
Thank you, Trustee Eubanks. So Ms. Troxel is here tonight from Winton Elementary. You just mentioned them. Welcome, Ms. Troxel.
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for having us. I have the honor of presenting our 3 new staff members this year at Winton Elementary. It's exciting to see the impact that they've had on this school now that the school year is almost over. And they all 3 have done an excellent job for us. I'm going to let them talk a little bit about themselves. The first teacher is Tiffany Teal, and she teaches 1st grade. Then we have Lisa Manning Blatstein, who's our new PE teacher, and Chantel Awney, who's our new resource teacher. And Winton is very fortunate to have them, and so is the Coeur d'Alene School District. So we'll start with Tiffany.
All right. Hi, I'm Tiffany Teal. I'm teaching 1st grade. I'm a Post Falls native, born and raised. Graduated in Post Falls, and then I went on to the University of Idaho for my bachelor's and master's degree. And then I taught the last 12 years in Post Falls at Prairie View, 1st grade. My husband and I just recently bought a house overlooking Sunup Bay and Windy Bay, so I was looking for an opportunity to hopefully teach a little closer to home. So I got the opportunity this last year, and I'm just very fortunate to be part of the Coeur d'Alene School District now.
Hi, I'm Lisa Manning Blatstein, and I come from Lewiston, Idaho. It's been a long time since I've lived there. I went to UMass Boston, stayed on the East Coast for a really long time, and I'm excited to be back. I have some twins in the school district, and that's kind of what brought us closer to home. I teach PE. I went to school for PE, and I love teaching PE. So I'm excited to be in the Coeur d'Alene School District.
Well, I'm Chantel Awney. I'm the new resource teacher at Winton. I'm teaching kindergarten through 2nd grade. I'm originally from southern Idaho. My family, I have 3 children. The 3 children running around here are mine. We spent about 10 years in Moscow, and there's no comparison to northern Idaho, and really wanted to get a job here in Coeur d'Alene, and feel very, very fortunate to be in Coeur d'Alene School District. And thank you guys so much.
Thank you all for coming tonight and introducing yourselves, and welcome to the Coeur d'Alene School District. Student body reports, I'll start with Coeur d'Alene High School tonight.
Good evening. Nice to see you guys again this month. April is a very busy month for us. Our juniors took the SAT on April 11th, and we are gearing up for AP tests the first 2 weeks of this month. Prom was April 29th at the Hagadone Event Center. Mr. CHS, our boys' beauty pageant, will be this Wednesday in our auditorium, and tickets are $5 at the door. DECA Nationals students traveled to Anaheim to compete from April 25th through the 29th. We had 31 kids qualify, which was really great. Our Spark students received Green Dot anti-bullying training this past month, and they're also creating a ViKind, which is play off of Viking, wall with positive messaging this month. Our new ASB president, Ms. Rachel Dooley, attended the Human Rights Banquet on April 28th with a few of our Spark students. And we had 23 students honored at the Upbeat Breakfast, which honors students with outstanding academic achievement, on the 11th as well. And then our mother-daughter tea, which honors senior girls and their moms, will be the 22nd of May at the White House. So we have just a few more exciting events for this year before we wrap things up. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Is anyone from Venture here tonight? Okay, how about Lake City High School? Has a big group tonight.
Good evening, esteemed board chair, honorable trustees, and district administration. My name is Alex Ayers. I'm the current ASB president at Lake City High School. With me tonight, we have our current ASB treasurer, Chloe Falshani, our current ASB secretary, Alina Sellers, and our ASB vice president, Rusty Dan, is currently with Deccan Nationals in California. We have the great pleasure tonight of introducing our new ASB for next year. We have our president, Val Logasosa, ASB vice president, Kira Simpson, ASB Secretary Taylor Pickford, and ASB Treasurer Peyton Barber. I know I speak for Chloe, Rusty, and Alina, and myself when I say that it's really been an honor to serve as an ASB officer at Lake City this year, and we know we're leaving the school in great hands with this next group. Spring is always a really busy time at Lake City. In addition to seniors getting ready for graduation, we have spring sports in full swing. Student council class elections are happening this week, and we're preparing our seniors for prom on Saturday at the Coeur d'Alene Resort Golf Event Center. Our juniors are also getting ready for senior year. They had the SAT day last month, and our college prep classes have gone on a bunch of college visits to Gonzaga and Whitworth already, and they're headed to Eastern Washington University tomorrow. We also are very pleased to share that Lake City has won the Airplane for All States contest, and we'll be able to put $3,000 towards our student council events for next year. As I said earlier, it's been really an honor to speak with you guys this year. We've all really loved this opportunity to be ASB officers at Lake City, and we look forward to everything you guys get to experience with our new officers next year. Thank you.
Thank you very much. K-Tech, welcome.
Hello, I'm Kaylee Patty. I am currently the president of ASB at K-Tech. I am in the welding and fabrication program. I am here with my career counselor, Soraya Pira. And we'd just like to update you on what's going on at K-Tech. Currently, we are planning, for the ASB, we're planning a car show, which is coming up next month. We're very excited. It'll be our 3rd annual car show hosted at our campus, and we are hoping to get a lot of attention on that. It's been going really well. We have a Facebook page and a lot of advertisements going out. And in our welding program, we are working on our buddy benches. And currently we have finished our Bora, and we're working on Woodland, and hopefully we'll be getting that done soon. And so far, K-Tech, earlier in this month, we had our skills, and we brought home 1st and 3rd in welding and fabrication. And it's been going really well, and I enjoy K-Tech so much. It's just such an honor to be able to be part of such a great school and have the opportunity to be a certified welder. Thank you.
Thank you for coming. Do you know what the date is on the car show?
It's June 3rd.
June 3rd. Okay, thank you. Mr. Colas, do you have a report from the Coeur d'Alene Education Association tonight?
I do. Thank you very much, and I apologize for being a little late. This report is delayed a month, and as a result, I don't have some of the paperwork that I was intending to bring with me. After the election, the CEA sponsored a letter that went around to staffs around the district and was signed in the copies that I had, but which I've misplaced in the month of moving in transition, by more than 300 members of the district staff at all levels, from bus drivers and maintenance people to kitchen staff, substitute teachers, and classroom educators, paraprofessionals. And I want to read at least, well, a significant portion of the letter because it is addressed to you. School board trustees and district administrators, thank you for your hard work and leadership in running a successful levy and bond campaign. As a district and a community, we have a lot to be proud of, especially the long tradition of community support for Coeur d'Alene schools from our patrons and the public at large. Passage of the levy and bond is almost 80% voter approval is a testament to the public's confidence in and appreciating for us, the certified and classified staff of SD 271. We are the people they know, across the back fence, at the grocery store, walking in the neighborhood, in addition to our work in the classrooms, school offices, counseling, support, maintenance, transportation, food service, and even in the principal's office. As 271 staff, we voted, we donated money, put signs in our yards, or made phone calls to support the bond and the levy campaign. And all these efforts were recognized by our community with a substantive endorsement of the work that we do every day in the passage of these financial tools to support our work. We have earned the voters' trust and confidence and their appreciation. Coeur d'Alene School District used to be the shining star of Northern Idaho with the most generous salary schedules and benefits in the area. We still have the most professional, committed, innovative, and technologically adept staff committed to student learning and development. We expect that you, as our leaders, will also find a way to substantially endorse the work that we do daily. Below are our signatures and as employees who work constantly at all levels to maintain and improve the performance of our schools and our students, and our collective reputation as the best performing large school district in the state. That was the staff's letter. I wish I had the signatures to give to you. I apologize. I have a couple of things to talk to you about. The Idaho legislature did well for school districts and public education this year. And that is thanks to the collaborative and cooperative efforts of the ISBA, the IASA, and the IEA. The legislature took positive baby steps to address many challenges our public school system faces in terms of education funding, the teacher shortage, and many other issues. Thank you, as trustees and as administrators, for your efforts both individually and collectively in that effort. My final comments are about Superintendent Handelman and the legacy that I think we should acknowledge as he leaves us. I disagreed with Matt a lot, vehemently. Sometimes, well, not quite to the point of yelling, but certainly to the point of complete silence. But I think I want to acknowledge the accomplishments that he made for this district. I don't think any district that I've worked in, any staff that I've worked for, I've seen administrators hire as many qualified people, highly qualified people, as he did. And I'm going to list several who are sitting in this room. Director of Secondary Ed, Trina Cottle. Director of Elementary Ed, Kate Orozco. Technology Director, Seth Dennison. Financial Officer, Brian Wallace. These are top-notch people, and he put an exceptional team around him. There are a whole bunch of others that I don't know about because I'm not involved in that level of hiring. We completed numerous large construction projects throughout the district. Superintendent Handelman was maybe overly open and honest with the community about the cost overruns for Winton. We've had dramatic improvements in technology and implementation in the classroom, curriculum adoption, processes to select texts, both literature and classroom textbooks. We had an incredibly successful levy and bond campaign that elicited electoral margins that indicate a very high level of public trust in the district and its personnel. Like I say, I disagree with Superintendent Handelman, and it may have been his time to leave. He certainly took advantage of his opportunity to get out of this district. But I found him to be, as the CEA wants, very process-oriented and principled. He made very few decisions without gathering lots of insights, and he was scrupulous about trying to maintain open communication with those involved or affected by important decisions. He established processes and chains of authority that generally worked effectively, but did require that all participants do the work of learning those processes and not circumventing them. The district faces many challenges ahead. We have the promises of the bond, the levy, and the long-range plan to fulfill. We have to continue to attract and hopefully retain qualified and talented staff committed to our students and our community. We have suffered significant losses recently that jeopardized the positive trajectory of the district. We lost Laura Rumpler, Superintendent Handelman, Brian Wallace, in addition to significant losses at various schools. Filling these leadership positions with effective, committed individuals falls on your shoulders. Here I will be blunt, because I see the CEA as a significant part, not the entirety, of the conscience of the district. Process is important. Consistency is important. Knowing your role is critical. John Hassel, a retired Project CDA teacher and mentor to me, used to say that you have to do what the bosses tell you to do, as long as it's not illegal, immoral, or bad for kids. Excuse me. Professional educators at all levels are professionals, and we should be treated as such unless we do something illegal, immoral, or bad for kids. Trustees, with the exception of Mr. Eubanks, are not professional educators by training or experience. I suggest to you that one of the reasons we've lost Superintendent Handelman is because our trustees lost faith in him and undermined him, either intentionally or not, in his ability to lead. The rumors of the challenges between the board and the superintendent will not disappear in a hiring process for a new superintendent. Several, possibly all of you at various times, have violated the process and philosophy of solving problems at the lowest level. You have gone looking for problems rather than allowing problems to rise to your level, if they need to. And you have put winning your issue ahead of the best interests of the students, the community, educators, and the district. With the significant loss of leadership at the district office, it is critically important that the trustees stay consistent in their leadership and focused on getting and keeping the confidence of district staff, from the bus barn and the school cafeteria to maintenance and counseling, and with every building principal, classroom educator, and paraprofessional, as well as with the public. Thank you.
Okay, so we've reached our time for public comment. I'd like to remind the public, while this is a meeting of the Board of Trustees that takes place in public, it is not a meeting with the public. It is a meeting of the board to conduct district business. The board does allow some limited public comment on district-related items. Those wishing to address the board during the public comment period are limited to one comment not to exceed 3 minutes. If you have additional comments that you'd like to present to the board, you may provide those comments in writing to the clerk of the board, Ms. Lynn Town. Ms. Town will ensure that board members receive this additional information. Please keep in mind that board members will not respond to public comment tonight. If I determine that an individual statement is too lengthy, personally directed, abusive, or repetitive, I may terminate the speaker's privilege to address the board. Okay, first up, Ashley Unruh. Welcome, Ms. Unruh.
I know that I would exceed my 3 minutes if I read everything, so I will not be reading everything, but I wanted you to have all of my comments. I'm here, and I will read fast so that I can get in as much as I can in 3 minutes. I'm here because there's an item on the agenda regarding, at least I think, I came in late, so I think it's on the agenda still, regarding the adoption of Math 1, 2, and 3 created by our district. I'm so pleased that our district recognizes the huge chasm between the current very low student achievement in math and the performance we hope they will be able to achieve. I appreciate the very serious efforts and energy put into the process of trying to close some major gaps and streamline content. I do thank each and every one of the board members, Trina Cottle, Mike Nelson, Ryan Gillespie, for agreeing to meet with me, sometimes more than one time, or a representative of the group of parents, concerned parents that I represent. So I do appreciate that very much. I've been very open to meeting with us and feedback and countless questions that we've asked. Excuse me, I lost my place. My comments are intended to be constructive and to continue to promote thoughtful discussion when you get to this item in the agenda. I have very serious concerns and reservations about the adoption of this plan. A version of it was first proposed in 2011, but apparently was not implemented. The district has called it integrated math, but that is not truly what it is. What they are proposing involves pulling content from 3 traditional math textbooks that we currently have. Integrated math is an entirely new curriculum that, to be effectively and sensibly implemented, would require the purchase of a completely new set of textbooks for our secondary schools and the implementation of a comprehensive program of professional development to educate our teachers on how to teach this new program. It is very different from how teachers have taught in the past and how most schools in the country teach math. I'm absolutely not opposed to integrated math. In fact, I really love the idea if it's implemented, I believe, as a true curriculum. Research tells us that both integrated and traditional programs can be successful. I am opposed to rushing into an untested district-developed program that's not research-based. I'm opposed to being irresponsible with our resources by spending money to implement a program that is not proven and about which parents are uninformed. I'm opposed to being irresponsible with our kids by using them to test an approach developed in-house that has never been used by anyone, anywhere. And the part that I'm going to skip over are some of the more specific concerns that I have, so feel free to peruse that. I am counting on and imploring the board and our administrators to take the academic preparation of thousands of students seriously. I know that you do. I'm not suggesting that you don't. We are talking about our future engineers, scientists, and business leaders. Please don't gamble on something untested. If you want to implement integrated math, take the time to research it thoroughly, invest in a proven curriculum, inform parents, and train teachers in the way that successful districts have done. Research shows that integrated math fails without robust professional development that begins well ahead of the implementation. Implementing a program like this successfully takes 12 to 18 months of preparation before the first class is taught. They are proposing to teach these first classes in 4 months. I respectfully ask the board to refuse to implement an untested program. Please either commit to succeeding with a traditional program that almost all schools in our nation use and invest resources in professional development to make this program work, or encourage the administration to develop a comprehensive plan to invest in a research-based integrated math curriculum with proper textbooks that is fully funded and supported with professional development. I hope that the board will unanimously vote to defer this issue until the district can develop a comprehensive plan using a true integrated math program, or stick with a traditional program. But if you choose to go forward with consideration, if we truly are a district committed to inspiring and educating our students to the highest level that we possibly can, please allow a 30-day public comment period on this district-developed math curriculum. Our math performance is a serious problem, but we cannot play roulette with our kids' futures by putting our hope in something unproven. This is too important. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Unruh. Just for clerical purposes, it is just for information tonight, so the board won't be taking any action. So at a minimum, it'll be out for 30 days public comment. But thank you for your comments. Matt Warner. Good evening, sir.
Good evening, board members. My name is Matt Warner. I teach at Lake City High School. Thank you for allowing us a chance to speak tonight. Was it Ashley? Just listening to Ashley, yeah, what a great advocate we have in our district. I work for the district, so when I hear things like, ooh, get a bunch more professional development, ooh, get more curriculum materials, that's great. However, like I work here, so I do what I'm told for the most part, and I work with what I'm given. So read between the lines there. However, I feel very supported in this district as a math teacher. I've worked real closely with Ryan Gillespie and Mike Nelson in the last 3 years from the adoption of a new curriculum, knowing that potentially integrated is coming down the line, understanding we have dollars to spend, all of the admin stuff that I would rather not have to deal with because I would like the perfect scenario in my classroom. Well, we know that's not always the case. So without rambling on here too much, my background in teaching, I've taught everything from catch-up math at Venture High School. I now teach pre-calculus at the secondary level. And is there a need? Are there holes? Is the way we're teaching it right now perfect? No. There's some huge benefits that we see as teachers. And I say we, I'm speaking for teachers I work with who are fans of integrated. Yes, there's some positives to that. I teach and work with math, like I said, at a very large range from kids who don't know their multiplication tables to getting right up to derivatives and at the calculus level. And so my view of what the resources we have, my resources extend from internet ideas that would align real closely to standardized. I have great resources within my textbooks. So I could draw from maybe 25, 30 different resources within the year to best prepare my students. And is there one resource that's gonna get us there? Sometimes I have to remind myself that the textbook is not the curriculum, and the curriculum that we have designed within our district to best prepare our kids. The text becomes an addendum or a resource. Do some teachers rely more on the text than others? Yes, we all have different styles. And so a lot of what, and Teresa, right? Ashley. Oh, Ashley, sorry. I'm great with student names, by the way, too. A lot of what Ashley said is great, and wow, what a nice, nice support we have as a group of parents saying, hey, our teachers need better resources, because who doesn't like a better car to drive? So if that works, that's great. Having said that, I understand that every year that we wait to potentially implement something that would potentially help our students, and within my own classroom, I'd be like, okay, let me do what I need to do to get the students where they're at. Well, you can't be rogue in our high school. You have to work with the design curriculum, and I do that. So I would say that, as I'm not speaking for all teachers, but there is a hunger for moving towards this approach. But I understand that if there's reservations out there to do it right, if they were just said to me, "Here, Matt, go teach it how it needs to happen," well, I'd be fairly confident I could do that. But we're not teaching in singularity. We have a whole pool of teachers, and we have to prepare them adequately, and we have to have confidence within the community. And this isn't one-room schoolhouse. This is a large district. So so I understand all that, and I would say that teachers don't want to just rush off on the edge of the cliff. However, you do have teachers who see benefits to this program.
Mr. Warner, if
we're done
up here. Sorry, if I could just ask you to wrap it up.
Yep,
I didn't
real
want to
good.
interrupt.
All right,
Thank you.
super. Done. Ciao.
Thank you for coming. Okay, so we're here for board comments now. I think we all want to address Dr. Cottle to some degree. Does someone want to open it up?
I just wanted to say thank you for stepping in and helping the board. It's been a pleasure, and it's exciting to have you in the district acting as our superintendent. So I wish you luck, and I'm looking forward to finishing my last few meetings with you.
I would echo Derek's comments, at least not all of them, for certainly, but some of them, at least in terms of the hiring good staff. And Matt made a good decision when he hired you, and I appreciate the work you've done, and I'm looking forward to working with you as an interim and beyond.
And I would like to say thank you as well for stepping in at this awkward time in our district, and I know that we'll be in very good hands as long as you're in that position, which is until June 30th, I believe, yes. Thank you.
It's starting to echo in here. I'm going to say the same thing. Thank you, Dr. Cottle, for stepping up and accepting this challenge and unique opportunity. For those of you who aren't aware, and I'm guessing most of you are, but Dr. Cottle agreed to the board's request that she step in and serve as acting superintendent through the remainder of the school year. There was a press release sent out today, so some of you may not have seen that because you're here, but the board will be searching for an interim superintendent to serve next school year, and then in the fall begin a process to find a permanent superintendent. And we'll be interviewing some different search consultants over the next week or so, and starting to set the path out for that. But we certainly appreciate Dr. Cottle and your efforts, and we look forward to the next few months, so thank you.
And I echo the thanks and look forward to working with you as well.
Well, first, it's really nice to be in the comfy seats for a change. But I would like to thank the board for this wonderful opportunity to serve the board and our students and staff and patrons of our district. I know sometimes transition and change is hard, and so I'm happy to serve and help, even if it's for a couple months, and it'll be a great opportunity for all of us. Some other comments I'd like to say is what we've started negotiations with the CEA. Things have been very, very positive. They have some new team members. We've only met a couple times, but we're keeping things light and looking forward to settling before everyone goes away for summer break. So that's my goal.
Okay, thank you very much. So, board members, do we want to break consent out as letter A, or do you want to handle it all at once? There's no request.
I'd like to handle it all at once.
Okay. So is there a motion to approve tonight's consent agenda, items A through O?
So moved.
Thank you.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed?
Nay.
Okay, motion carries, Ms. Town. Okay, so we're on to our information items tonight. First up is something we heard about a year ago from the Idaho Education Services for the Deaf and Blind, and Ms. Jenny Gilmore. Welcome.
Hi, I don't know if this is on or not. Maybe. Hi, so I'm Jenny Gilmore. I'm the preschool coordinator. So yes, this MOU with the Idaho Educational Services for the Deaf and Blind was up for your review last year with Amy Clark and Brian Darcy presented it. So they're an outreach service that provides preschool and community-based options for deaf and hard of hearing and blind and visually impaired children the ages of 3 to 5. And so in the state of Idaho. So they offer two kinds of preschool classrooms, and the classroom that we would be getting is a total communication class, and so that would use sign and speech in the classroom for students of deaf and hard of hearing. They currently have 6 preschool programs in the state, but there are none in regions 1, 2, and 3, so this would be the first in our northern part of the state. We were going to try to do it last year, but they were unable to because they couldn't fill the teacher position, but now they have a teacher and they're ready to go. And it would be a teacher who specializes in total communication instruction, and we would just be responsible for the students that are within our Coeur d'Alene School District zone. There will be other students that will attend that will be outside the Coeur d'Alene district, but that would be the other districts would have to provide money for those students. Do you have any questions?
So board members, I misspoke a little bit. This is for info and for action tonight. And a motion would be to approve the MOU with the Idaho Education Services for the deaf and blind as presented. That MOU starts on page 100 of our board packet tonight. And the summary is on page 99.
Are you looking for a motion right now?
That would be great, yes.
So moved.
I'll second that.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks for being here tonight. Good evening, Mr. Wallace. Looks like you're up on the agenda now with some information on the Hayden Lake site.
Yeah, good evening, Chair Morrisroe, Dr. Cottle, and trustees. I don't have anything to present regarding the Hayden Lake Center, but we wanted to just have this chance to have a conversation and keep the board up to date on the progress we're making on having that ready for September. First, you saw in your consent agenda that we're moving forward with the furniture order for classroom and office furniture. I want to give kudos to the maintenance department. They worked very hard to get the best pricing we could. Worked very closely with Bill Rutherford on identifying needs. They walked the site several times, reviewed our current inventory, which actually has been sort of depleted, which is all right. That's not a bad thing. We're getting what we own out in the schools, and we're ordering the furniture based on that work. On the hiring side, of course, opening that building is going to involve new positions, and HR has posted custodial positions to get the daytime and evening custodial positions on board. They'll start working right away once they get them, because there's a lot of cleaning to be done in that building, and they'll help also with summer projects, light maintenance, and we're also going to have some summer programs there. School Plus is going to be there this year as our north site for, I guess it's Summer Plus, I should say. So we'll have the custodial staff, to help, as that program gets going. Building maintenance, Brian Martin has been working with Bill Rutherford several times. They've walked the site on spring and summer maintenance projects, really looking at where are the minor repairs, where do we need to do the most painting, some individual room needs, trying to make the school in the best shape we can. For the opening, it's not going to look like a brand new school, but we're certainly going to paint the worst areas and have paint crew there and start getting the site going and looking as well good as we can. HR department is also working on staffing levels, for classroom teachers and support staff. As we discussed, I know through attendance zone and some of those processes, we gave you some lists, and I can review that if you'd like, but it's we'll have hiring classroom teachers, the librarian, the support staff, the crossing guards, the specialists for music and PE, and so Kelly's working on getting all those positions that we'll have to fill and will be posting those and getting those going throughout this spring and summer. Finally, for the cafeteria, Ed Dakar is working on the kitchen and cafeteria needs. There's some stuff that was already there, but he's putting an order together right now for the cafeteria tables, so we'll put new cafeteria tables there and some of the other things in the back end of the kitchen to make sure that food service is ready to go. And of course, with Summer Plus there, we'll be serving meals during this, the summer, so we'll be online here very soon. And I guess that's just sort of giving you a background. There's a lot of pieces to get it going, but we're certainly moving forward, and there'll be kids there and the Tuesday after Labor Day, and the school will be ready to go. One thing I wanted to mention, and maybe this to have this conversation, is really a follow-up on a conversation that Long Range Planning had about the Hayden Lake site. And at the last Long Range Planning meeting, questions came up as far as the the long-term plans for that site. And of course, we've discussed that at this level more than once. And some of it was like we had before, is what would be the best thing for that site, and some of it depends on the goal of finding 2 sites in the north. And we right now we have one piece of property that we're getting appraised right now. Hope that'll come in later this month, the appraisal, and then we'll see if it's a parcel that could meet our needs. But that's only one, and we still need 2. And as our district boundaries are tight and available property, the discussion went, well, would this be our second elementary site? Would this be where we build to meet our growing needs? And there was there was not consensus at Long Range Planning. There's some advocating saying that would be a good place to go. Others advocated that they don't think it's the best site for a long-term for an elementary school. So it was a good conversation, but just to let you know that conversation had happened with your board-appointed committee. And with that, I'll leave it for any questions or comments.
Can I add just a little bit to that? I appreciate what Mr. Wallace shared, but I didn't want to overlook an opportunity to share with the board and just sort of my commendation to Mr. Rutherford for the tremendous amount of work he's done in the last few weeks. So as the site is getting ready, he's preparing that learning community. He's done a tremendous amount of work reaching out to families. My guess is he's probably connected with at least 80 some families. And in fact, he asked the district office that if there were any phone calls at all from any families with any concerns or questions, to direct them directly to him. And that's what he's done. He's answered their questions. He's been very candid with them about the learning community he hopes to develop. They've formed a Facebook page. He's reached out to start a PTA already. He's gathering those people together to figure out how to name the school. He'll be back here in this room within weeks asking you to rename the school. As you mentioned, Brian Martin and I and Bill have been in the school several times, and he wants to do a not-so-extreme makeover so that people will walk in and feel real comfortable in that learning environment. And admittedly, he's probably put in 16 hours a day nonstop for these last few weeks, really working hard to get it up and running. So I just feel like he deserves notice. Although he's not here, I hope he knows that we appreciate the work he's done.
Running Fernan and also, getting Hayden Lake going. But, so I appreciate what he's been doing, and I saw some of the stuff he's put on social media, which is good. Brian, I guess I have just 2 questions. Really, I guess one of them is, are you running into significant mechanical issues? I drove past there the other day, and I saw some vehicles from the school district sitting in the yard there, and it looked like people were doing things. And I guess I was just wondering, and do you have any idea what kind of costs we're talking about to open the doors here? I know this is all premature, but do you have getting any idea of this? I mean, we had a bad winter. Do we have a leaky roof or anything significant going on?
Not that I'm aware. I have, Brian Martin is here, and he could talk better to the specific building issues. I think the mechanical systems are fine, the roof is fine. We did have to put some costs in, where one bathroom we had to make compliant for handicap accessible, which they're working on that project, and they put a lift in for the stairs, which is just sort of a chair that goes down to make the upper area of the building when you go down towards the cafeteria to be that's handicap accessible. So that project's been going on. I think some of the trucks and cars out there were doing some site work. The building itself, I mean, I think fairly, solid considering its age. And I think all the systems are working because the HVAC was going. So to get that going overall for the maintenance is not the large part of the cost. Really opening that building and where we're going to feel it next year. And honestly, it's going to make it tough to build a balanced budget for next year, is the staffing costs. And I believe we've mentioned this in the past, but if you run, here's a good example. If we have 3,000 kids in our high schools. And if we had 1,000 student high schools, it would be more expensive than what we do right now with 2 1,500 kid high schools. Smaller schools cost more money. So by opening this Hayden Center, we're taking on additional costs this first year. For sure, we're adding a principal FTE. That's, salary and benefits, that's $110,000 that we didn't have to pay last year. We're adding a behavior support assistant. We're adding a special education resource teacher. We're adding secretaries. We're adding library manager. We're adding 2 custodians. We're adding specialists for art, music, and PE. We're adding playground assistants. We're adding crossing guards. We're adding, all those salaries, and those are have to be accounted for and budgeted for. And I believe the numbers we shared before, when you look at all those costs, it's up to almost $1 million, $950,000. But that's the reality of opening that building. And so we're building those costs as we look at our revenues and we look at all our other expenditures, and we'll see where the numbers land, because we haven't done our final revenue projections on salary-based apportionment. Kelly's done the first blush. I did my look at it. She's out of town right now. When she gets back later this week, we're going to make sure that we both agree on the numbers and at least have a better idea on what our new revenues from the state will be. But yeah, so the costs really are in people. It's not in the building. Some in utilities. We estimated utilities would be an additional $30,000 per year from what it costs to keep it at 50 degrees.
But we are mitigating the overcrowding in our northern schools, and we are getting kids out of portables, correct? How many portables are we going to be able to dispense with next year with the reopening of the school?
I don't know. My guess is that I'm not planning on removing any portables from any sites right now. They may be empty, I suppose. My guess is if we have continued growth in north, that those spaces may end up being used at a necessity. Perhaps not. And I think if we took 250 kids, possibly for that K through 4 is sort of what we're looking at might go there. That'll certainly help. That's roughly 125 from Hayden Meadows and from Atlas. So you could say, depending how they go, you're saving 3 to 4 classrooms per building. But you may only save 2, depending if they're not spread out evenly as far as the grade levels, because they won't come in perfect 25 grade level span packages. But yeah, I mean, I'm not arguing the efficacy of opening Hayden Lake. I'm just telling you it costs money.
We already had the argument, right?
One thing I just want to touch on, and Brian touched on that a little bit there, was our long-range planning discussion. It was pretty robust. And there was definitely emotions on the issue. One thing I asked that committee, and I want to bring up here tonight, is just, we're early in our property search, but we're not super early in it, as you know, and we've had challenges identifying parcels that will be suitable for an elementary school in that northwest corridor, just because of all the construction going on and all the growth out there. So I had brought up the idea, what if we can't find another site? What if Hayden Lake has to be one of the sites? And I wanted to gauge that committee just to get an idea of that, and what their thoughts were. And like Brian said, there was no consensus on that, other than maybe that wouldn't be the preference. And I think I'd agree with that, but it may be a reality at some point if we continue to struggle finding property. So we've at least, Long Range did have the conversation somewhat. It was pretty informal, and there wasn't a huge turnout at that particular meeting. But
the long-range plan, we're not going to have that discussion again tonight, but that's been the discussion for some time here. What is the long-range plan for Hayden Lake Elementary? That hasn't been decided, right? That hasn't been decided. And we knew there would be an expense of opening it up this year. And I thought we had the money for that with the levy and everything else, but hopefully we do. So, right? I mean, those kids are going to get service. I guess the question, what you're saying, I guess what I'm hearing, Brian, if we leave those kids at the crowded schools, that's cheaper than opening a new school, right?
Yes. Yeah, it's just...
And they'll also have kids in a crowded school, which was the reason for doing this.
Correct. Right? And it's always been a challenge. You can see schools, I think West Ada would be a good example. The West Ada School District, who's had to open, because of their growth, in the largest district in Idaho, several schools, just because of that fast population, is they had the dollars in their plant levy to build the schools or a bond. But where they were really stretched and challenged was in the general fund for their operating costs, because adding those buildings adds the operating costs. And so, they were sort of at a double-edged sword where they're asking the public for additional plant money, but then they're asking for additional supplemental levy, and how much is the public willing to support? The same discussions that we have here, and probably every school district in the Northwest does. But that's been their challenge. But definitely, as they open new buildings, it pushes operating costs and is just a factor in school budgets.
We're going to be talking budgets here in the next month or so. So you going to give us some suggestions about how to manage this?
Well, the costs for Hayden Center were not, rolled into, the additional dollars we asked for the levy. It's like anything with school budgets, is we don't, unless we had a large amount of kids show up and we got more from state apportionment just because of attendance, we can't raise prices to get more dollars like a business or have a new product where our revenues are sort of set. So really, if those costs are going to happen, and they're have-tos because we're opening that building, then our options are either to reduce program staffing or something in another area, opportunity cost, or you use fund balance to cover the difference. I mean, those are sort of the options.
Okay, any further questions?
I have faith in you, Brian. You'll get us through this.
Okay, Dr. Cottle.
Okay, Chair Morrisroe and trustees, in your packet on page 103, you will find our continuous improvement plan. It's a strategic direction survey. In the past, we have used a survey, the CEE survey, another acronym, which was from the Center of Educational Effectiveness. It was quite lengthy and had lots of questions on it. And so this year, we went a different direction, and we developed a survey that was more in line with our continuous improvement plan and in our strategic direction. And so it had, smaller amount of questions, which was nice. We gathered data from administrators, certificated staff, classified staff, parents, and students. most of those groups, we were pretty successful in getting people to respond. We did have a lack of response in a couple areas. For students, we didn't receive as much as we would have liked from students at Woodland, Lakes, and Coeur d'Alene High School. So we will be running that survey again because this is baseline and it'll be used in setting goals for buildings and setting goals for the district. It's very important that we get that information. We also didn't have enough responses from parents at Woodland and at Coeur d'Alene High School. So again, we will try to run that. So instead of kind of going through each slide, because this is really technically preliminary information, I would just like to share some results. Most things in here were very, very positive. Students are feeling safe, employees are feeling comfortable within our schools, but we did notice some areas that we will probably end up, once we have our final results, looking at for improvement. One of those areas is attract and retain. When you look at the administrator's response, our certificated teacher's response, and our classified staff response, we basically, our results weren't where we wanted them to be as far as attracting and retaining certified and classified staff. Another area that we noticed in here is an area that's not where we'd like it to be, that we'd like to look at some improvement, is when you look at administrators, certificated staff, and parents, our results weren't as high in the areas of resources to meet individual student needs and resources to meet the social and emotional needs of students. Interestingly enough, students felt the same way, that we could do a better job at meeting their individual needs.
Dr. Cottle, what would be an example of a resource?
An example would be maybe professional development. I know in one of our workshops we showed that resiliency video, and so sometimes it's not just having that awareness that a student has so many ACEs, but how do I as a teacher or staff member help that student, and what does it look like in the classroom so I can meet their social emotional needs as well as their academic needs. So it may be professional development, it may be in the elementary school increasing the number of counselors or assistant principals, to go to IEP meetings, so things like that. I was going to highlight a couple other things in here. I didn't want to go through and read all of them in here. Here's an example in certificated staff. One of the questions, number 4, says, I am provided professional development to meet individual social emotional needs. And so that would be like an item just like I spoke to. And I think that's kind of in general, kind of things in a nutshell. Once we do run the survey again, I would like to bring it back to the board so you can see kind of the differences. Right now, especially in the student area at the middle school level, it's primarily Canfield students, so we're really not getting a good idea of the perceptions of all middle school students. So I don't know if there's any questions or comments.
When do you expect the final data? Next month, maybe, or?
I think we would probably have it prepared for the June meeting.
Okay.
And then you come up with a plan to address the deficiencies? Is that part of the deal?
Yes, this will be baseline data. What we've done in the past is in June at the end of the school year, we would take our survey data from the CEE, which is the same thing we'll do here, and the administrators look at it. We look at it as a district as a whole on areas that we're doing well and maybe areas that we can improve. Building principals also break it down and look at their individual levels. So for example, you may have some things are of strength at the middle school level, and then other areas that they need to work on that may differ than the elementary schools. And then they also look at individual school perception data. So one question in there is, I feel safe at school. And so if a school noticed that it's not where they want it to be, where students, then they would set a goal on how they could improve students feeling safer at school. So it's basically baseline data. And so any goals that they would make as part of our continuous improvement plan process, you would see those goals.
The answers are all anonymous too. I mean, people,
Yes.
yeah. So administrators and teachers and others should feel free to answer the questions.
Correct. And then there is an opportunity for them to comment and if they choose, which is helpful.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Cottle. Mr. Wallace, you have our finance and operations report tonight.
Trustees, the finance report is in your packet. I think at this point, again, no big surprises for budget. Our expenditures, when you look at the percentage, when we compare it to last year, year-to-date, is sort of stunning. It's 65.58% of expenditures last year, and this year is 62.55 when we compare to budget. I always think that's sort of good that when you're going from year to year, if you have the same pattern, you know that things aren't too off track, so that's a good sign. Our revenue as a percent year-to-date is less than last year, when we're at 87.41, and last year we had, when compared to budget, it collected more. Part of that was last year we had an emergency levy, and this year we did not. So that's to be expected. The good sign is that at our cash balance right now is roughly $500,000 more than last year. I think that will eat away because our costs are a little higher this year, but we're tracking to end with a balanced budget this year. So that's good news, even though we've had the reduction in salary-based apportionment we know is coming. That sort of also coincided with less salaries and benefits paid. We didn't do all the hiring we thought because the numbers weren't there. So it is balancing. We have a little bit of a gap, but we're holding the line where we can to make sure we come in with a balanced budget. Again, our enrollment is slightly higher than last year, or very close when you compare our enrollment numbers. But again, our attendance hasn't been quite as good as last year. I'm here for any questions, but things are looking pretty good. In May or June, we'll accrue our salaries, and then you'll see our expenditures go up more to the 80% range and coincide with our revenues when we do that revenue accrual of all our teacher salaries that get paid in July and August, but are charged to this year because they finished their contracts.
Any questions for Mr. Wallace? On the revenue side, our ADA was down versus last year, correct? So that's going to account for some of the decrease in revenue as well?
Correct. That's part of the decrease in revenue when we compare to budget. And then you look at some revenue that you didn't anticipate that wasn't in budget. So, for example, that $150,000 check that we received from Avista, that wasn't anticipated, or that wasn't budgeted, I should say. So that goes in, that's good on the ledger, and the other things. So you put all that together, we're going to be okay this year, but it's a tight budget. We're not going to have a huge surplus, but I think we'll be right around even.
Always good.
Bond money, it's later as an action item, but bond money doesn't come in for a while, right? That comes in starting when? Next year?
No, the bond money, of course, that doesn't impact the general fund, but we, later in the meeting, you'll have before you the bond resolution, and we have our bond attorney, Daniel Quaid, to talk about that. She'll help you walk through some of that. But we've already had our ratings call with Moody, with the rating agency, as far as with myself, Superintendent Handelman, our financial advisor, Eric Herringer, Dr. Cottle was part of that, Katie Ebner, and we talked with Moody's over the phone, and that went really well. And they'll release their rating in a few weeks, which will give us, that piece of information as far as the interest rates we'll be able to ask for on the open market. We'll be going out in May trying to sell those bonds, and we hope to close by mid-June, like June 18th, June 15th. And so we'll actually have money in the bank mid-June to start on projects.
That's not part of our budget here, but I just want to know where that money, when it's coming in, when you can start spending it.
Right. It'll be coming in soon, and we'll actually have it for a little while before some of the big bills come in, because obviously when you really start spending the money is when the general contractors start giving you their bills after bid. But we'll have the dollars to do the projects this summer, and also for the architects to start working on their side. And of course, their costs are higher up front when they do design. That's when they charge the most of their fees. So we'll be in good shape.
You know, we'll get all this money up front in the middle of June, but we're not going to spend it all at one time. And so a lot of it's going to sit in a bank or in banks over a period of time. Can you estimate how much interest we might earn during that time? 50,000, 100,000? Maybe enough to make a difference with Hayden Lake Elementary.
Well, any of the interest that we earn on those projects have to go towards the projects.
Okay.
And yeah, I haven't estimated that. We actually talked with Eric Herringer, our financial advisor, on the best ways to approach investing of those dollars during that time. And perhaps it might be good to have him come to the board and talk about some of the advantages. I mean, we could simply put it in the what they call LGIP, the Local Government Investment Pool. It's very safe, very low rate of return. There's other, there's limits to laws on what we can do with the money and how we can invest it. Mr. Herringer recommended actually that you get honestly, an investment advisor to manage it, for you, who has a fiduciary responsibility to do the best. Ultimately, what happens is you have obviously some fees associated with that, but they'll probably do a better job on the return. And you also, do you have the in-house expertise to really do the best job? And I think, Katie Ebner's really good at what she's doing, but she hasn't been involved in that type of investment and things like that. So it's things to consider. We can't earn more money than what we pay in interest. It's called arbitrage, and since they're tax-free bonds, we can't really make money on it. Given today's interest rates, that's not going to be a problem.
So he may be back, Eric Herringer, next month?
I hadn't
be
planned on that,
determined, okay.
but I can certainly ask him that if he has a recommendation and the board would like to discuss about that. I mean, I think since the dollars really aren't getting there until mid-June, it wouldn't be, maybe one of the meetings we have in June, especially if he's up in this area, it'd be worth the conversation for sure.
Right. Okay. Thank you. Good evening, Dr. Nelson.
Good evening, Chair Morrisroe. How are you tonight?
I'm doing good. How about you?
Very fine. Thank you very much for inviting me tonight. Got 3 items for you back to back to back, so hopefully I can stand at least this straight and tall for you for a little bit. Chair Morrisroe and Acting Superintendent Cottle, members of the board, tonight we present to you the ad hoc committee's recommendations for 2 new titles for whole group instruction. They are located inside of your packet for more details, and there is a minority report addressing one of the 2 titles, which I will also address in a few moments. Our committee took a look at 2 grade 12 proposed titles for you. The first is a Shakespearean comedy. It would be the first of the 3 Shakespearean titles that we have that is the comedy Much Ado About Nothing. Typical to Shakespeare, it addresses love, but it looks at the comedic sides of love and how relationships, of course, interact with each other. The members of the committee thought that it was a very approachable title, that it really gave a great perspective on romance, especially at that time in life, and how those still tenets of romance are falling in love today. Very strong characters, especially on the female side, which was also a wonderful piece for them. That committee thought that Much Ado About Nothing would be a great title for 12th grade whole group instruction, and are recommending it to you tonight at a vote of 5-0 to 1, with the 1 abstention because he actually forgot which title we were reviewing that evening, so it wasn't for the lack of trying. The other one was a little bit more of an interesting conversation, took up a great chunk of the meeting. It was the discussion of the 1611 King James Bible. Let me make it very, very clear that the intent and the rationale that is written by the teacher is that we would not provide all 700 pages of the King James Bible for our students to read. The intent is to provide an underpinning for modern literature today. Remember that anything that we provide to students needs to be reviewed by this committee and presented to you for whole group instruction. So what ends up happening is that many times today's literature may reference something biblical. It may reference something dealing with apples and serpents. And a lot of times students don't really know where that metaphor is coming from. So this would allow students to be able to have a copy or a parable or a story directly from the Bible that does not appear in our anthology, and to be able to discuss where those pieces come from. The challenge, of course, with that is the separation of church and state, and making sure that we are not proselytizing or preaching to our students, but also just sharing that this is one story of where it comes from and how that story has permeated and moved along over time. The vote for you this evening on that is 3 in favor, 0 opposed, and 3 abstentions, with again the 3 abstentions because it is a very large, dense title that we asked our committee to read. However, the minority report does bring up some good concerns, all of which were addressed there. Mrs. Sorensen was not able to attend our ad hoc meeting, and I believe that we addressed a lot of her concerns, but it is important to know that this title is presented to you tonight with a little bit of a mixed bag from the committee, but we are very sensitive as to how it may be taught in class. Both of these titles will be in our little library at the district office and available for anyone for 30-day public review as well before we bring them back next month for action. Are there any questions that I can answer on either of these 2 titles?
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. The one question I have, so the King James version of the Bible is really kind of it's a smaller coverage of the Bible as literature?
Correct. It would be a literature-based understanding. And again, it's simply to provide that foundational understanding of if a particular piece of prose is being read and a metaphor comes along, it would now allow the classroom teacher to be able to reference that title, to pull a specific passage, page out, parable, whatever it is, and show how that story is being used from that foundational text.
I think when I took it in college, it was the Bible as literature.
Correct.
And it was a good class.
Correct. There may be a time where an elective course might come along that might be similar, but that's not the intent of this rationale.
And I think that would be a different can of worms entirely, but just to cover a foundation to take forward through the books that are referenced here in the packet. Yeah, so, I mean, the lead into Beowulf and the Canterbury Tales, et cetera, I understand it, so.
Thank you, and we have to do a very good job in making sure that our community understands it as well. And I think that the teacher's rationale is very clear with it, but again, I think there's that perceptual issue that we will have to make sure is clear.
I'm just going to add that I feel much better about this now. I had a lot of concerns in the beginning, but thank you for your explication this evening.
Thank you, and we certainly understand.
The one with all the these and thous, right? That version is the one that's okay. I don't have a problem with it as long as we keep those lines clear. And that's trusting the skill of our teachers, which
Mr. Kuhns, who made the rationale at Coeur d'Alene High School, is very passionate that this would be an opportunity, and he does teach some of those upper-level 12th grade courses, and I certainly understand his rationale.
Thank you, Dr. Nelson. I almost called you Dr. Cottle.
That's her.
You're next.
I am. Chair Morris Rowe, Acting Superintendent Cottle, and members of the board, we also present to you tonight a new course proposal. This is the first of two proposals that we'll provide for you. We're doing it mostly because we have a grant opportunity. Through Kootenai Health, they have reached out to us and offered an opportunity to be able to pay for a course called Cope to Thrive. This would be taught at Venture High School exclusively and be a life skills course for students who are struggling with stress, depression, anxiety. It would be another level of supports available to them. It would be taught by the nurse, the physical education teacher, and also the counselor at the school. It's a web-based course, and it's been used by several organizations and school districts around our nation. We would be the first in northern Idaho to take a look at it. But it does come with a cost of about $5,000 to $6,000 a year, which would be completely covered by the course of the grant. The grant has been submitted. We do not know the status of it at this point, but this certainly would be another arrow in the quiver of Venture High School to be able to support their students, and we present that tonight for you for information.
Dr. Nelson, isn't there an opportunity for dual credit with NIC with this course as well?
We are currently exploring that as an option, Superintendent Cottle, and that is something that we want to make sure that we receive the grant first before we move forward with that. But there is a possibility of a dual credit articulation so that students who are receiving instruction in this course, it's a 10-week course provided either online or face-to-face or a mix of those two. So once we have more information about the status of the grant, we will be looking at it as a possible dual credit option.
And grants are typically 1 year, is that correct?
It depends on the granting organization, and I have not seen the grant application. It was filled out by the nurse at Venture High School, Mrs. Drager. So I do not know the answer to that, but I would say typically, yes, most organizations go on a year-to-year basis.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions? Thank you, Dr. Nelson.
Absolutely.
And still Dr. Nelson.
I know,
And,
can't
and
get rid of me
Dr.
quite
Cottle
yet.
combined, it looks like. Item G is our secondary math continuation from April 17th, I believe.
And Dr. Nelson will start this out, and then I'll just chime in on a couple slides.
Again, good evening, Chair Morris Rowe and Acting Superintendent Cottle, members of the board. This last month, Ryan Gillespie, our secondary math coach, myself, and Dr. Cottle had the opportunity to be able to stand in front of you to talk about a vision that we have. We recognize that our math scores are not where we would like in a variety of different measures. And what we would like to do is look at a new approach towards how we teach math at the high school level. We presented to you a couple of different ideas presented within that, if I can find the space bar. And many of you had questions about this or that and how it would be implemented within our district. We have some answers for you tonight as to what that could look like, but still we would like to simply try to move forward with that conversation. This is not going to be an instantaneous implementation. This has to be done right, and it has to be done with fidelity within the district. So the purpose of us presenting more and more information to you is, again, to ask for your continued blessing to at least move forward, and then we can show how we plan to do more implementation along the way, and we'll kind of talk to you about that. One of the questions that you had is really around scope and sequence. We'll address that. Professional development, what our vision is right now for not only individualized professional development, but lasting professional development. We recognize that this cannot be a one-trick pony. This has to be something that we do over a series of years to make sure that our scores increase and our students have greater opportunity to truly love mathematics and want to continue their study. The third piece is we wanted to make sure how we would engage our parent and community. Trustee Hearn had also asked a lot about resources, how we would like to be able to use the resources that we did adopt 2 years ago now. This is our second year of implementation with big ideas. And then I believe we also heard from Trustee Hazel and as well as Mr. Eubanks, Trustee Eubanks, about what would our goals look like for this, and we do have some of that. And again, hopefully we can address most of this along the way. Some repeated slides. This is not new, and as Mrs. Unruh had talked about, the words integrated math have been uttered in our district for a long time. We looked at integrated options very clearly when we were doing our math adoption 2 years ago. It was something that we didn't feel that we could pull the trigger on for a couple of different reasons. First, we didn't find titles that we really thought were truly going to meet our needs as a district. The second option was that we just didn't have enough buy-in from our staff yet to move to an integrated approach. I think we're to the point where that's going to be ameliorated a little bit more. But our focus is really trying to make sure that we have that focus and coherence, continuing our work on our standards mindset, using the resources for collaboration that we already have. And although we have tried to do a lot of these pieces already, we have found ourselves moving to more of a survey of math approach, which is really not what we need to be doing. We don't need to be going through the book faster just to be able to cover all the chapters. We need to make sure that a student has deep understanding so that they can apply that in their current and future levels of thought. So last month we came to you with a vision of what this could look like. We proposed to you a course sequence called Math 1, Math 2, Math 3, of which we have a new course proposal in your packet this evening and available for the community to take a look at for specifically Math 1. The intent of our implementation would be to offer Math 1 for this coming year and then phase in the other courses along the way. Another arrow that we added in on this is you'll notice that there is an end goal in mind, and it's to continue to move our students to the highest levels of mathematics that we offer, to move more students into AP, to move more students into our pre-calculus and calculus sequences as well. But that focus and coherence, that use of professional development and resources really can be done at a very methodical, sequential pace. So I'd like to break down a couple of different pieces for you. First of all, this graphic that you see on the right-hand side of your screen comes from the conceptual shifts in mathematics from the Common Core State Standards, or as we know them in Idaho, the Idaho Core. The top two are really where we need to focus right now, and it is that word of focus and coherence. These are teacher-created documents. They have been referred to with our Regional Math Center from the University of Idaho, so they've been looked at and vetted along the way over several weeks of implementation. But they are also a result of several months of discussion even before that. So let's kind of take you through what we're looking at. The course proposal inside of your packet does have that same structure that we have currently in algebra, geometry, and algebra 2. However, moving the concepts along so that they better fit with the baseline knowledge that students are receiving in 8th grade instruction, and also building better upon them so that they're more aligned with the assessments that students may be taking, the PSAT, the SAT, and the ISAT along the way. Much clearer unit plans, many more specific learning targets. Again, right now, our students are going through 17 chapters of a book, of which 10, 11, 12 chapters really should be the focus. What we're trying to do is, again, pare that down so you have greater opportunity in the classroom for deep instruction rather than it being that survey approach. We also have assessments organized by learning target. Those assessments will be provided universally throughout the district, so we will be able to do some benchmark and progress monitoring of students along the way so that a student isn't just waiting until that end of unit test to make sure that they understand the material, that we can provide resources along the way. We're also going to interweave the PSAT and SAT resources into these courses much better so students, again, see the end goal that's there. Right now, there is very high interest from our content teachers at both Coeur d'Alene High School and Lake City High School to move. I actually have a couple of quotes that I'd like to present to you up on the screen. The first is from the department chair at Coeur d'Alene High School, Mr. Adam Hannon. This, again, has been a process. This has not been something that we've just tried to turn a switch on and say, here's what we're going to do. This has been a grassroots approach, and it hasn't been because of pressure, but it's been because of expectation. Our results have driven a lot of this discussion. So now you can see there at Coeur d'Alene High School, we have people clamoring to teach Math 1 in the coming year. Because again, they see that the current status of our math is a little more futile. That just by doing the same thing over and over again, we're going to get the same results. We're not going to be able to move forward. The other quote that I have up on the screen for you now is from Mr. Hannon's counterpart, the math chair at Lake City High School, Mrs. Karen Grossman.
She talks about how it would be so refreshing to be able to have students coming into her pre-calculus and calculus courses with foundational skills that make sense, instead of it just being taught here and there, where concepts are interweaved with each other. The word integrated may hang some people up, but this is more of an interweaving of concepts so that they better make sense, that when students can get to those highest levels, they can do deep understanding and they can cross-calculate what they need to see. But we also know that we will not be able to be successful in any type of change in mathematics unless we have the buy-in from our parent and community. I do have a couple of slides that address this idea. We're in the process, first of all, of readdressing or redesigning our website so that in the departments area, in curriculum, mathematics, people will have greater access to tutorials and resources to be able to help. That's one of the challenges in core math, is that integrated approach has really challenged some parents. Now in grades K through 8, we have resources in Ready Math that tear out, perforate, and can be brought home to say, hey, this is what we're doing. We don't have that right now in secondary math. So we're in the process of addressing those types of pieces. We also would like to ask for your blessing to move forward to start holding parent and community nights. If you feel that we're on the right track, we need to start talking with our parents and guardians as to what we're looking at, why we're looking at it, and to make sure that they see that their students are not caught in the middle. We also would like your permission to move forward with starting to do some target marketing, email and social media. And we would also like a parent advisory. 2 years ago, you seated an ad hoc committee for mathematics. That is the committee that made the recommendation to you to adopt Ready Math in grades K through 8 and Big Ideas in grades 9 through 12, or 9 through 11 at that particular point. We'd like to reseat that committee, and we'd like to open up other opportunities so anyone in our community can be a part of this concept, can look at the results of our students along the way, can see those conceptual shifts that we're really trying to reinforce in that parent guide that you have in your hands. We also want to make sure that they can see how our students are being progress monitored and how we need to be accountable for the results that we see. The third piece is the other leg of the stool. It's not just the communication to the community, it's how we're going to make sure that our teachers are empowered to be able to make the greatest change. They are the ones who ultimately it comes back to. We look at results, and yes, we see our student results, but it all comes back to our system. We have to bind together to improve. Dr. Cottle wanted to take a few moments to talk about what we plan on doing to address professional development with this as well.
So you'll notice in your packet there's a draft document, and Ryan Gillespie worked on this. He visited with the math teachers, those that also participated in the adoption, as well as with Dr. Nelson and myself. Basically, there's multiple tiers in here of ways that we can provide professional development. The first one is a formal training through PEBC's Minds on Mathematics, and it's an institute that we could actually bring here to our teachers. There's a picture up there. There's a book. It says grades 4 through 8, but they actually do training for teachers K through 12. And it would be, the sessions would be led actually by the authors of the book. This institute, it would be very different than what we'd be able to offer here in our area, because it really does address all 8 of the Common Core standards for mathematical practices. And this would be the first time teachers would be able to explore explicit thinking strategies to help deepen student understandings of mathematics. We did get a quote for this training. The quote is for 60 participants. So if you look at the budget on there, it seems expensive at first. It's a little over $15,000. But we would be able to open up this training to other math teachers in the area for other districts and charge a registration fee, which would be able to offset some of those costs. You'll also see in there that there's really different trainings. That $15,000 would be a 2-day initial training in the fall, and then we could do a 1 training later on during the school year. Same thing, we'd be able to offset costs by opening it up to other secondary teachers in the area. And then there is an option to have an on-site training to where the PEBC staff developers would come in and work with teachers in the classroom as they're working with their students. There are also, you'll see on the second page of some things that we can do with in-building support. We already have the commitment of both high school principals to offer common prep periods for teachers that are teaching the Math 1 course. That way they have the opportunity to work and plan together, look at student assessment data, collaborate pretty much almost on a daily basis if they wanted to. We also have in there an opportunity to provide in-building support with the instructional coach. This would basically be Ryan, but would also be able to provide some training to some of the lead teachers like Adam Hannon, to where if Ryan wasn't available that they could step up. One of the other items in there is teaching labs. This is the same thing as the Thinking Strategy teaching labs that we're doing with our elementary teachers. Again, teachers have the opportunity to observe each other, but it's specifically to observe student thinking and how do we elicit that deep thinking in students. And then there's a piece in there with the focus of the curriculum and assessment and some things that we could provide supports. So again, this is kind of in draft form, but it gives you kind of an idea of some of the professional development we'd be able to offer. One thing I did not mention that Dr. Nelson has up there, there's some additional things that we could do besides professional and development. We could focus on class size. We did get a commitment from both high school principals that in that Math 1 class, that first year, is to make sure that we have a lower class size, so that way they can target instruction more with those students. We did mention the teaching labs and the peer coaching. And up there, we would like to have some additional opportunities for instruction for students that are struggling. So Dr. Nelson, if you'd like anything you'd like to add to that?
Thank you, Superintendent Cottle, and I think a lot of that comes also from this would be on top of our existing work. We have had 3 successful SAT summits this year, where we've had an opportunity to really dive deeply into that particular assessment. We'll be able to better utilize our Monday morning collaborations in addition to these as well. So I do think that we have a very comprehensive view available. I'd also like to recognize in the audience today is Dr. Abe Waleen from the University of Idaho's Regional Math Center. He has been working with Mr. Gillespie, our secondary math coach, quite a bit in looking at not only the scope and sequence, but making sure that we have the supports in there from not only the Regional Math Center, but from our resources here in the district as well. So he certainly has been doing a lot of work and is greatly appreciated for that collaboration. One of the other questions that we had is, well, we did this adoption 2 years ago. What are we going to do with all this stuff? And the answer is we still want to use it. We want to use the resources that we have available, but we also want to shift some things around. If you take a look at the left-hand panel of the screen, those are the things that you approved us purchasing back 2 years ago with the adoption. We have texts for Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. Using former Superintendent Bauman's words, we don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater. We recognize that the content that is there is still good. It still gives that deep practice. The problem is we're doing too much of it at this particular point. With the purchase also, we have student journals for Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. But the most important thing that may be up there is in the bold and italics at the bottom. It's the access through the dynamic classroom. One of the challenges is that we don't have one-to-one devices in our math classes. So using that dynamic classroom is not happening as much as it could. Keep in mind that when we purchased this as well, we have full access to their dynamic classroom, which gives us access to not only their traditional track materials in Algebra, Geometry, Algebra 2, but also to their integrated materials, integrated 1, 2, 3. Although we wouldn't be following a track specifically, we can still pull pieces a lot better so that we can actually create resources that would look at it. And if you look at West Data School District, Boise School District, they don't have an adopted text. They use online resources from the Treasure Valley Math Center or the state of Utah to be able to do that. All we would be doing is modeling that same, but using our own flavor and scope and sequence to be able to do so. So what we could do is that middle column there, we would like to reallocate some of those resources. The student journals have been used in classrooms, but teachers have found that although it's nice to be able to perforate the materials out, it's just
a reprint of what students are doing in the book. So they don't find as much value in them as they thought that they would. We do have a buyback option for that. That was on a 6-year contract, and we don't have them laying around. So we could use the extra 4 years of that piece of the contract to be able to do some additional things. The other thing that we could do is if we do move to class sets available of algebra, geometry, algebra 2 in every one of our classrooms, we may have the ability to resell some of those texts back as well at about a 60% buyback cost. So we're talking about a potential savings here that we could use on that third column over to start moving classroom sets of Chromebooks into every classroom so that you have really 2 different ways of instruction. You have the traditional textbook approach, and you also have the Chromebook approach to be able to make sure that each student's learning is personalized and have the opportunity for deep instruction to be able to take there as well. If we do go to a classroom set of Chromebooks as well, we have better use of resources such as Desmos, which is the newest way of looking at graphing. It's a graphing calculator type of software which is really dynamic that again we cannot do right now. So that's kind of the vision of the resources. Keep a majority of the resources we have, reallocate them in a way, and use some of the resources that are not being used as much with Fidelity to be able to better serve students with classroom technology. That also helps support Seth and his vision of moving closer to a 1-to-1 device ratio. We will certainly be very close if we were able to do that in those 27 classrooms. The last piece is really, okay, if you're going to do the professional development, if you're going to move these resources around, if you're going to spend all of this time communicating with our parents and community about this potential change, what can I expect? What is my return on investment? Well, some of those we don't have completely right away, but we'll use some of our baseline data from the 15-16 school year. In that year, 80% of our students passed Algebra 1 with a C or better in second semester. That's okay. Second line down. The percentage of students in grades 10 who are proficient on the Math ISAT was abysmal. It's at 29% for that school year. Now we're currently providing the exam and some of our initial results look promising in some schools, but at the same time, we're not happy with where it's at right now. I don't think you are either. Next line down. What would we do in grade 11 to meet that college and career ready benchmark in mathematics? Last year, 32% of our students were able to meet that college and career ready benchmark. Okay, I think we can do better. You can see how we've kind of laid out our goals along the way. Finally, the last area that we would like to see is those percentage of students taking advanced level math classes. We did grow a little bit in that, but again, I think we can easily attain 50, 60, 70% along the way. Those are our initial goals. Of course, in grade 9, if we do make a switch from Algebra 1 into Math 1, we will work with our content teachers so that they have some skin in the game as well and help us identify what would that metric look like in grade 9.
And I would like to add, I mean, it's really interesting if you look at our baseline data of the percentage of students in grade 9 that passed algebra with a C or better, and then compare that to our test scores. It's really not, you know, it's not a consistent picture. If we have 80% of our students that are successfully completing Algebra 1, then we should have higher scores. And so in our mind, it shows that with that logical next step that we really do need to focus that curriculum, provide more coherence, and engage students in deeper thinking. So that is why we put up there, we would like the math teachers, the Math 1 teachers, to define success goals that are more focused and based on the curriculum.
Just to clarify, the textbook being used in 2015, 2016 was not, that wasn't Big Ideas?
That would be our first year of Big Ideas Math. This is our second year with Big Ideas Math in the 16-17 school year.
Okay.
It is a 6-year contract with Big Ideas, so we do have those resources available for us for at least the next 4 years, unless we as a district decide that those resources are not meeting our needs, and again, we could exercise the buyback or the cancellation option. But for right now, we do feel that the resources do provide us what we need to do for this shift. So ultimately, what are we asking for? It's not a vote. We present to you our course proposals tonight for 30-day public review. Those will be available at any time, and certainly we expect to hear some feedback from you, and we expect to hear from our community as to where we're at. But the ultimate question is that one. Do we have permission to be able to at least move forward? We'd like to have some conversations with our parents and communities. We'd like to start having some focus groups. We'd like to start talking a little bit more. Because if we are on the right path, we certainly want to make sure that everything is ready to go for the coming year. We'll leave that up to you.
Dr. Nelson, your plan would be to start implementing this fall?
The vision is to be able to provide Math 1 only in the fall of the coming school year, the 17-18 school year.
You may have already talked about this, Mike, but how will Math 1, 2, and 3 jibe with college entrance requirements for specifically Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2?
We've already looked at that and done work with our colleagues around the state. It does meet the state graduation requirement of being, the state requires 3 years of math, 1 in algebra-based, 1 a geometry-based, and certainly this would address algebra and geometry in each of those 3 years. The third year can be a survey of math of any kind taken in the senior year. I will tell you that even though the state requires math in the senior year, it's not real plausible that a student takes math in their freshman year, takes math in their sophomore year, skips math in their junior year, and takes it back in their senior year. Most students in our district are on our 4-year math track.
Those are
That's correct.
Okay. What about U of I? Will U of I accept Math 1, Math 2, and Math 3?
We don't see any problem with an in-state school or an out-of-state school at this point because, again, they are meeting our state graduation requirements. But certainly we need to do a little bit more with that along the way. If you look at our colleagues around the state, there are no issues at this particular point.
That's going to be important to communicate to parents and students as well, I think.
And that's why we value our partnership with the University of Idaho and our other resources around the state as well. We are not unique in this. This is not just Coeur d'Alene doing something odd within our state. We can rely upon what our colleagues have been able to do already. But again, we see no red flags at this point. The only thing that we will have to do is address this with the NCAA because the NCAA does things based on course title. So we'll have to reapply with the NCAA to make sure that they would recognize our sequence as well.
That's the concern I've had also. I was just thinking, okay, let's say some student wants to go to University of California or University of Washington or some nice out-of-state school. You know, back when I applied for college back in the Stone Age, you did have to have certain classes that they looked at in addition to, of course, test scores. And so you're saying that has to be an application process, right?
All college entrance is based on application,
Well,
but
I
we would
mean
be
the
very
student, but I mean, what you're talking about coordinating this with what colleges would look at.
correct. And we would go through and make sure that we do an articulation with all of those pieces. We do that with any new course proposal that we provide anyway. So anybody who's taking a brand new elective for our district, we have to make sure the college and universities understand the concepts of that. That same exact process would be followed through with this as well.
And then I would add, a lot of that can be alleviated based on how we transcribe those classes and credits, as well as providing, pretty detailed course descriptions.
Oh. Sure, join Dr. Nelson.
Okay. Board members, I just wanted to mention that, I'm Abe Wallin. I'm from the University of Idaho. I'm the regional mathematics specialist. I work with the State Department of Education, and I was on the committee several years ago that went through the adoption as a community member. One piece that I would put out there that just came out in the last week, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics released a brief discussing moves towards this kind of curriculum, this sort of look at teaching mathematics. And within that brief, they cite, I believe, 8 to 10 other organizations, university organizations, and it's really a call to universities to start recognizing this sort of teaching as valuable for college and career readiness. So there is information out there. I think that it is moving. I believe that the institutions in Idaho are discussing this, and I think they see the value of this as well. So, thank you.
Dr. Nelson, what's the impact on the ALP students, or what would the pacing be for those? I think it's my understanding that an 8th grader currently in ALP math is essentially taking Algebra 1. Is that correct?
Correct.
And so what do they take next year?
Then it would probably go into geometry. Remember, the only course that we would be replacing at this point would be Algebra 1 with Math 1. So we will still have a geometry Algebra 2 for the next 2 years to be able to continue that track as well. So the current students who are on the ALP would go into geometry in this coming year. The students who are in Math 8, for the most part, would go into Integrated 1, Math 1, whatever it ends up being called. There is some discussion as well as, do we look at an accelerated Math 1 as well? But we're not ready to propose that for you this evening.
In future years, they would take Math 1 at 8th grade and then move into Math 2. Is that?
That is a possibility that we would move this down into the 8th grade level. Right now, it would just be at the high school level, although our professional development would be focused on all secondary math, so really our instructional practices can support all of these courses. Ultimately, Math 1, Math 2, Math 3 will stay at the high school level, and we would probably change our ALP math to be more of a true integrated math, which we already have at the middle school level, and again, make it deeper rather than it just being on the Algebra 1 side.
The professional development, what would the timing of that be? I guess one question I have is just on the timing of that. If we're doing that after the start of the school year, which I think is what I read, or at least that's what I envision when we talk fall.
Well, the professional development is ongoing. If you're talking about the PEBC delivered professional development component of our professional development, that would be in the early fall, probably in August, before the school year starts. But again, if you feel like we're on the right path, we've already started doing a lot of the professional development now. Again, this has been talked about for several years. This is not a new thing that we've been talking about. But that critical mass has been generated more and more this year. And under the direction of Ryan, who really is an exceptional mathematics instructor and a tremendous asset for our district, he has been talking about how these shifts, these conceptual shifts that you see on the inside left-hand side of that pamphlet are really becoming more and more to light. We are seeing results of that already on the ISAT. We expect to see results like that on the SAT when they're released in the late May. But at the same time, that piece of professional development from the PEBC, which we feel is an important part of this, would happen in late August. But again, we're not going to go down that way unless we feel from you that we're at least on the right path.
I know we saw a few quotes from some teachers.
Mm-hmm.
So the feeling amongst all of the teachers, because that's a very important component to the success of this, is if they're all on board as well.
I cannot in good faith sit in front of you today and say the word all. However, we are focusing on implementing Math 1, and there's great zeal to be able to teach Math 1. And as we do Math 1 successfully, I'm very confident that Math 2 and Math 3 will continue to encompass that. I also stand in front of you like I did 2 years ago, and when we first started talking about Mr. Morano, Gene Morano was on our, he was the lone dissent on that committee who said, we need to start integrated now. And most people on that committee, comprised of community and teaching staff, were just not there. We're now closer than ever. And we've been, again, talking about this for so long. But again, I think it took for us to be able to see the results at that pitiful level, for us to really realize as a team, as a unit, as a school, as a district, that something has to happen. And this is the cohesive vision of that coming together.
And I would just add, Adam Hannon, who's the department chair at Coeur d'Alene High School, did a poll of his department of the 6 teachers, and 5 of them were interested in teaching the Math 1. And then he also did a poll about geometry, and there was only 1 teacher interested in teaching geometry. So it was kind of telling that the math teachers are really interested in this integrated approach. And I'm not sure if you'd want to entertain a comment from Matt, because he could probably share with you about what the Lake City teachers think.
You have to go to the mic.
I would support what Mike's saying as far as the energy within the math department at Lake City. There's excitement about this track. Resources aside, as math teachers, we're enveloped in the curriculum, but I would say we're excited about this. Can I say 100%? No, but I would say well over a majority. We're talking upwards 60%, and we're getting too specific. We're excited.
I would like to ask a few questions, if I may. So I understand. I just want to walk through the benchmarks that we must meet are set by the state.
May I ask a clarifying question?
Sure.
Trustee Hazel, are you referring to graduation requirements?
No, I'm referring to benchmarks that students must meet each year by the end of their year.
There are none. The only thing that a student must receive is a credit within those courses to be able to graduate.
I think she's referring to the continuous improvement plan requirements, benchmarks.
Okay, those locally identified pieces, yes. Those are those goals that we have set to be able to meet our own expectations.
Right, so we have benchmarks that we need to meet with a curriculum that we design here locally, utilizing textbooks and resources and a plan put together collaboratively between administrators and building principals and teachers within that band or that department?
We are on the same page.
Okay. Now I need to also ask another clarifying question, which is an approach like traditional math or integrated math different than curricula?
Curricula is what we develop to be able to meet the expectations. So
Is the approach how you deliver it in the classroom?
Correct.
Okay, that was my understanding as well. I would absolutely love to give Mr. Warner and his colleagues all the tools they need, but I'm not comfortable moving forward. I'm one of 5, mainly because I keep going back to, and I love this, but I keep going back to things like where we're using appropriate tools strategically. And I'm curious if Big Ideas is the appropriate resource. I saw that we've covered deep instruction, not a survey approach. My problem is how can we get there when we talk about focus and coherence? In this book, according to Ed Reports, these textbooks, which is the traditional teaching, not the integrated teaching, they failed on focus and coherence, and they then weren't reviewed for rigor in math or usability. So I'm coming at it from the standpoint of, are we arming our teachers with the appropriate resource? Sure. If we want to hit the ground running and we're behind the times, is it the time in which we take a step back and look at what we're investing more into, knowing that we want to go to the integrated math? I mean, to me, that's the textbook, and the strategy there is the foundation of where we're taking our staff, where we're taking our students. And if the core of it is Big Ideas, whether Big Ideas, you look at their traditional curriculum textbook or the integrated textbook, it's not reviewing well. So is that the appropriate resource for us to use? Because there are other integrated math resources.
And Trustee Hazel, Chair Morrisroe, Superintendent Cottle, members of the board, I do believe in what you're saying. However, I would like to caution you on that report a little bit. The report that you're looking at reviewed the Big Ideas version from 2012. We did not adopt that title. We adopted the Big Ideas from 2016, and that has not been reviewed by that panel. I can, of course, understand completely what you're saying. Is Big Ideas the right resource to be able to use? I can stand here confidently, putting on my best Ryan Gillespie impression, that yes, it is. The resources are there for us to use, but again, if we do look at the allocation of resources and then allow us to be able to use those one-to-one devices, then we have access to everything that all of our other districts have as well. Those online resources, those pieces that you have, absolutely are there. However, the copy of the text that you're looking at with that particular report does not reflect the current edition. And I have not seen anything that does address the current edition as we have adopted.
Do we have data on how this Big Ideas traditional textbooks have worked in an integrative approach from other districts?
We do not.
Yeah, I'm not willing right now to guinea pig kids over. I just feel like we need to take a look at this. I'd love to hear what it would take cost-wise. What are we looking at as far as for our high school books?
I can give you a generality if you like. Our current text that we adopted in the series over the 6-year adoption was somewhere around $350,000 to $400,000. Again, I think from the fiscal standpoint and from the instructional standpoint, those materials have what we need. What we need to do is stop going chapter to chapter to chapter to chapter, covering chapters that are not being addressed and assessed and being built upon, and focusing on those chapters in the right order that help our students build that focus and coherence year to year to year.
So are we teaching to the test in that sense?
If we want the results, yes, we are.
Well, how
But at
does
the
that
same
help
time-
them, you know, piecemealing the approach to the wider sections of what we're teaching? How does that prepare a student to go on to college, where, you know, we are, for our purposes, covering segments. But when usually the traditional approach is you spend the year going step by step by step. Now, I'm not advocating the traditional approach. I'm one of those that I don't care what we pick, let's just fully fund it and develop it before we roll it out. But that would be in a perfect world.
Sure.
Yeah.
Trustee Hazel, I certainly understand your concerns, but the reasons that we've taken the concepts for Math 1, the concepts for Math 2, and the concepts for Math 3 is that we believe that they are foundational year to year to year. That truly, if our outcome is to do two things, to prepare our students for that senior year of math whereby they are empowered to be able to take the highest, most challenging courses that we have, and to perform well on those college entrance exams, that we really have to have that approach. If teaching to the SAT is a challenge for that, I fully support it, because if our goal is to be able to increase not only the ability for students to be able to go across the board, but to get into the top tier universities that continue to grow our district, I'm fully for it. So what we've done is we've taken that staircase approach, but we have interwoven the ISAT, the PSAT, and the SAT along the way, so that when a student does take those exams in our normal sequence that we would normally deliver them, that they actually have the material. Right now, students in our district are taking the SAT, and some of those concepts have not been taught to them yet.
I'm
So
very aware.
We have now we've put that in a sequence, logically placed from step 1 to step 2, that automatically gets them there and empowers them so that they will be in the highest levels of math that we can.
Is there an update on Big Ideas Math from 2012 to 2016 as to an outline of the changes and amendments made to those textbooks?
I would assume so. I do not have that in my back pocket. When we reviewed the 2016 version, it was fresh off the press. The integrated had not yet been printed. We do have sample copies of it available. But when we met with our content teams and during the SAT Summit, they didn't really like the flow of it. of how pieces just seem to be disjointed one for another, whereby now we have concepts connected with concepts so that when we do teach Unit 4, there's an automatic connection to Unit 5. And we've built those synapses into the course pacing guide that you can see as well, so that you can see unit to unit, chapter by chapter, how those interim assessments lead into the next chapter and the connections that are being made along the way. But I could, if that's something that you wish, I could certainly talk to our vendor for Big Ideas and see if they have
I think it's
something addition to addition.
I think it's imperative to be able to
We just didn't
answer
review the
community.
2012, so it wasn't something that was in our forefront. The 2016 was the version that was presented to us by the vendor, and that's the one that we ran through the adoption.
Right.
Dr. Nelson, I would be curious too, the 2012, I think that's prior to Common Core. So I think we'll see some big differences there. I know in my previous district, I was working with curriculum, and we were very hard pressed to find a math book 3 years ago that was aligned to the Common Core. So we may find some of those things as well.
I'll put that request in though for you, Trustee Hazel, and try to find that as quickly as I can for you.
Dr. Nelson, on...
Thank
you. Of course. This might be just a different way of asking what
Bless you.
Trustee Hazel was asking, but from the state, is there content standards similar to science, right? And we've heard a lot about science this year because they deleted a few, but I assume there's certain benchmarks, certain things that the state requires in that regard. Is that correct?
Correct. Chair Morris-Rowe and Superintendent Cottle, yes, the expectations are the Common Core state standards, or as we know them, the Idaho Core standards. And there are standards in two different strands, we'll call them. There are grade 9-10 standards, and there are grade 11-12 standards. So as you look up and down our course pacing guide for you, you'll notice the 9-10 standards being referenced along the left-hand margin. Again, we're confident that the instruction would be structured in such a way through our approach that we would be able to hit all of those standards for that. Moving into a proposal for Math 2, Math 3 along the way, you'll see how those will continually stair-step. That would be referencing that very first document, the multicolored one that we presented to you for information last month.
My biggest concern, I don't have concerns with the approach or the idea. My largest concern is just with the pace of it or the timing of it. You know, it seems a little rushed, and that's my concern. Are we just going about it too fast?
I can tell you from your perspective, it may be you've heard us for 2 separate months. But behind those scenes, this conversation has been going on 6 to 8 months before then. The transitions have already been taking place. And most of that has been on the professional development of our teachers. And again, it's been based on the fact that those results that we saw drove it. We've done the SAT summits. We've done a lot more pullouts for math this year. We've really tried to give that focus and coherence there. And the biggest thing that we come back to time after time after time is that we're teaching way too much. We're going through so much of this that our students are not generating the focus and coherence that they need to generate. Therefore, that's what drove this course proposal and this new sequence to you tonight.
The biggest concern I have listening to all of this is teacher buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
You know, Matt mentioned maybe 60% of the teachers he's aware of are buying into this. And I'm not picking on you, Matt, not at all. But how do we get that up to 100%? How do we get everybody on board?
There's a lot of questions when it's an unknown. And we've been talking about this approach for a long time, and the time is here. And I think there is a little bit of a risk that we are putting out there. I completely understand that. However, it's our job as leaders in this district to improve. And the way that we improve is by modeling improvement. We show our teaching staff how to teach in today's ways, how to constantly monitor and watch our students grow, and to make sure that their buckets are filled as much as the students. We need to do a better job with that. And by asking you to bless this approach or ask us to move forward, it gives us a greater opportunity to say, this may be happening. And we need to put those resources and show them how that reality comes. And when we do that, I do believe that that number will grow just like those year-to-year numbers that you saw, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90. All the way throughout, we have to build that understanding. The way for us to do that is not to stay doing the exact same thing that we're doing right now for fear that we will get the exact same results.
Yeah, I'm right now, based on all that I know, I'm 1 of 5, not willing to move forward. I guess I have heard, and I am a proponent of integrated math. I believe integrated math as an idea and an approach would go a long way to help our students and improve our scores and help with adequate yearly progress. But I just don't know that this is the vehicle to use to do that. To use the car analogy where we need to drive a better car, I absolutely agree. I just don't know that pouring money into something that's not been proven to not be a lemon is worth that. I mean, there's no reviews yet on 2016, and there's enough concern over the 2012 version, and then depending on what the changes have been made, I feel like more information is needed. And with that, I'd like to hear more in the future about, the iReady, how iReady compared to dynamic
classroom.
I think I heard that our iReady program wasn't being utilized as much as we would like, and that we were going to try to improve that as a one-to-one resource for our students in the middle schools. So how do we know that we would, if they're not using it as much as we'd like in middle school, how and why are they going to be using it in the high school?
Sure. Trustee Hazel, Chair Morrisroe, and Superintendent Cottle, I'm not sure what you're seeing with middle school. We saw good growth, and Mr. Gillespie showed us this last month some of the growth that we've already seen in the use of iReady.
So maybe I was mistaken. Where are we lagging in iReady?
iReady as a tool is doing okay. We did see improvement year over year from last year.
Is our participation with our students where we would like it to be?
In terms of using iReady,
Mm-hmm.
they are using iReady for diagnostic 3 to 4 times a year, and our instructional usage of iReady, and I'd have to look at just the middle schools, are in the several hundred hours a week. So I can certainly pull those statistics for
classroom?
you. I'm sorry?
Classroom and home use?
Mm-hmm. A little bit of both. But yes, we actually are mandating benchmarking of iReady this year. It was the first year that we have done that. And we are seeing growth to growth, year to year use of that. I'd be more than glad. I'm not prepared with it this evening.
No, not necessary. No, I was mistaken, so thank you.
No, that's not a problem. I'd be more than glad to help you out. But the use of the dynamic classroom is similar to that in Big Ideas. And again, those resources aren't being able to be used because in the high schools, we don't have one-to-one devices like we do in the middle schools and elementary schools. In iReady, each of our students has an instructional license for mathematics, and that's what they're using to be able to continually progress monitor along the way. We have the exact same thing at the high school level with Big Ideas already. We're not able to use it to the fidelity that we would like to because the resources aren't there. So we would like to be able to use some of those resources more wisely to be able to do so. And again, adding those classroom labs is going to make a huge intake move towards it.
So I have a question. As Dr. Nelson's gathering some of this requested information to bring back to the board, would it help if we had the opportunity to visit with some parent groups and get feedback and bring that to the board as well? Do some focus groups, or do you think that's premature?
I'd like to hear from more teachers, more math teachers, more high school math teachers. Not that I don't trust you, because I do, but this is such a critical issue for our kids in our district. In fact, this may be one of the top 2 or 3 most critical issues our district faces right now. we've got to get this right, okay? I'd like to hear more from the more math teachers.
Trustee Eubanks, may I ask a follow-up to that?
Yeah.
How would you like that to be done? Would you like me to generate letters of support? Would you like me to have them email you specifically? Is there a particular way that you would like that to be addressed?
What the math teachers who don't support this, what their rationale is.
Okay.
Do they just not like change? We don't have any choice but to make some changes here. The scores we've had are not good. We've got to do something. But I'd like to find out what the complaints are and then maybe begin to address them one at a time to bring people on board.
Okay. I will do my best to be able to collect that for you.
I really haven't said a lot here. It's because I don't know a lot about this. The reality is that math was very painful for me in school, and so I don't know much about it other than what I need to do to get through it. And so, yeah, you know, what I do know, in my simplistic way of looking at this thing, is that our test scores are miserable, and we need to change that. And whether we are pushing hard on a traditional curriculum or going to the integrated, I frankly don't care. I'm dependent on the professionals here, the professional teachers. And also, I think that we need to listen to some of the people in the community that have spoken up, like Ashley Unruh and some of the other women who seem to have put a lot of energy into studying this whole issue. So I'd like them invited into committees or however that works. I know you've met with them, and I would like to hear what they have to say. They're outside the district and would have a different perspective is all. I'm not saying it's better or worse, it's just different. So I'd like to hear what they have to say. So I guess I'm just kind of on the point where, you know, it's not an area that I have an expertise in. I am dependent on the professionals, but I want to see some improvement. I think our scores are embarrassing. You know, we say, well, we're doing great in the state of Idaho. Well, that isn't much. You know, the state of Idaho isn't doing that great nationally. So I have to trust that we're going to spend a lot of money and do a lot of professional education, that we're heading the right direction. And that's all I need. So I want, whatever we do, is to have some research based on it, some science based on it, some proof that this has worked in other places and is likely to work here.
And Trustee Hearn, that is truly why we are in front of you today. We are simply asking you, can we move forward to having some parent nights? We've presented to you the course proposal tonight. We're not asking for a vote. That does put it out for 30-day public review and gives us an opportunity to announce some opportunity for some community engagement, not only with our classroom teachers, but with the people around us to make sure that we're addressing those concerns. We do recognize, again, the timing of it and that it may be looked as rushed. We are trying to be as methodical as we can to be able to make sure that this is done well. So if you feel like we're at least in the ballpark and that you do feel like we can go out, that's all we are asking from you tonight, is to simply say we'd like to be able to have some of our math experts, some of our content teachers to be able to engage within the community in a variety of different platforms, talk about this, and ultimately when you have the opportunity to have all the information in terms of these resources that you're asking, when we have that community feedback for you, and hopefully some of you would be able to attend that community night, that we could have a full understanding of the gravitas of this situation and our plan to be able to move forward.
I have a point of clarification. Is your intent to come back in 30 days for action, or is your intent to come back in 30 days for more information?
Our intent is to be able to move forward with action within the next 30 days. That would be the normal protocol whenever we make a course proposal.
My hope is if we're going to move that fast, that quickly, that we have a difference, a change in conversation to where we look at, one, the approach of integrated math versus traditional, and I'm one of 5, Dr. Nelson. I don't know that my colleagues would feel the same. And then the other part of the conversation is whether or not the resources we plan to utilize fit the goal we're trying to achieve.
Duly noted, and certainly we have those same questions. We'd rather cross our T's before we come in front of you to be able to ask for action. So that is indeed the intent of us to be able to be in front of you today.
I don't have a problem with you engaging the community more, and I think that's an important piece of this. So I'm fine with that. You know, I have my reservations, but my reservations are mainly on timing. As far as this issue, I think at this point, we have to do something. We can't keep doing the same thing we are doing, because it hasn't worked.
And that is the result of
so-
our SAT summits, when we brought our teachers and our stakeholders in to take a look at our ISAT results, our PSAT results, our SAT results. And ultimately, it keeps coming back and back and back to the scope. So it's taken us some time to really narrow that scope down, similar to what we talked to you about last month, where we showed you the components of the SAT as one measure, the components of the ISAT, and how what we are doing is we're spending an entire year in geometry when that's 10 to 15 questions of the exam. We're not doing it well enough. And we need to look at the scope of where we're providing. And I agree with you, whether we keep teaching Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 and shuffle the deck and make sure that the components in there are better organized, or whether we call them Math 1, 2, 3, to me is irrelevant. But we need to make changes, because I cannot stand in front of you and keep showing you these results. And our teachers need to be better supported so that they have the resources in front of them that they're confident in as well, to be able to say, what I am teaching you is valuable, and what I am teaching you is going to stair-step into the next concepts that you're going to learn. Completely understand.
And I would just add, I think there's a lot of parents that aren't aware that we're talking about integrated math versus the traditional route, and I would like to have that opportunity to engage them in the discussion. We have some wonderful active parents that, have been paying attention and weighing in on things, but I think it'd be important that, we visit and engage more parents in this conversation, especially with this type of change.
What happens to the timeline if we get to next month, it's slated for action, and there's none taken?
We're back as normal. We'll be teaching Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2. We probably will reorganize the curricula in some way.
Mm-hmm.
However, it makes us no sense to teach only, let's say, 3 chapters of geometry in a year-long class. So in that particular course, we're kind of stuck at that until we have a better track that better assimilates to the concepts that we need. Much more algebra, much more statistics and probability than we're teaching right now, and a little bit less geometry. And taking those concepts and now showing, well, we're not just teaching algebra just to teach algebra. That next year you're going to be talking about this. That doesn't work. We need to be able to say, we're teaching you this algebraic concept right now because next unit we're going to show you how it interrelates with geometry. And continue to do that and layer that on. So again, we're building upon that integrated approach that they're getting in kindergarten, 1st, 2nd, all the way up to 8th grade. And not just starting again with algebra and focusing all the way through that.
Using the existing resources, aren't we tailor-making our own curriculum there?
In some ways, however, again, the scope of geometry is, again, part of the problem. We have a book that gives us 17 chapters, I believe, of geometry when we really ultimately need 3 to 4.
Yeah, but we're still utilizing an untested curriculum.
In terms of?
In terms of piecemealing between 3 textbooks for
Okay.
Math 1.
Mm-hmm.
And it's my understanding piecemealing isn't necessarily recommended amongst educators, unless it's kind of a last-ditch approach. I mean, we absolutely have to do something, but I don't know that experimenting with our kids right now is the best approach, or if we take some time to really put together a stellar math program. I don't know that the next 30 days is something that we can pull that together, but I've articulated some of my concerns. I know that there are others that are going to have more in-depth concerns in the weeds, but that's my overarching goal is I love integrated math. I can see the merits, but I just want to make sure that the teachers are adequately supported, and I want to make sure we're delivering the best product we can to our students.
Understand, and keep in mind, again, if you look at West Data School District or Boise, some of those that we're following who are in this approach, they don't have a single source resource that they're teaching from.
Are they using Big Ideas Math?
They are not. But they are not using any one specific book. They're pulling from here, they're pulling from there, and simply that's what we're doing. But our base resource would still be Big Ideas. So we would use the written materials, the concepts and big ideas, and then we would layer the Regional Math Center's work, the Doceo Center's work, the Treasure Valley Math Center's work, the State of Utah's work. The State of Utah is entirely integrated Math 1, 2, 3. All of their resources are open source. We could absolutely bring those pieces in, but the value of the materials that we have right now are already on our shelves. They're already in our students' hands. The challenge that our teachers are being asked to do is to teach 17 chapters of that when it's not as necessary. And they're not able to make those connections between Algebra 1, Geometry, and Algebra 2 because they don't have those resources available to them. What we're doing is we're reshuffling what we have, still building the same concepts that are addressed in the core standards, but not throwing away the resources that we have because they do have value.
So I think the question before us tonight is can they continue with the research, and can that research include reaching out to the public? And that's what you're asking.
That is correct.
Are we comfortable with that?
I'm comfortable with that.
I'm comfortable with it.
Okay. I'm going to take a quick break here. That went pretty long. So we'll start back up, hopefully, at 7:45. So we are back. Thank you, everyone. So we're going to move on to item H, which is hiring practices continuation discussion from a few weeks ago. Dr. Cottle.
Good evening, trustees. In your packet, starting on page 159, there's some information. First, you'll see an informational summary that was gathered by Trustee Hazel. It provides you some information on background investigators and different, there's different ones listed there that we could possibly consider, talk about, or further research. You'll also see some memorandum from our HR Director, Kelly Ostrom, which kind of outlines some of her research on the live scan fingerprinting. The original cost, startup cost, we thought was $13,000, but it looks like it's more in the $9,000 range. She was unable to be here to help report tonight, but she did attend a meeting conducted by the State Department of Education last week. It was Thursday and Friday. The State Department has been receiving several complaints from other districts, as well as ours, regarding the timeliness of the fingerprinting and background checks. And so they held a meeting to talk about those issues, and so we look forward to hearing from Kelly and what we can learn from there. There's also a copy of the flow chart that was presented at the workshop last time. And then we have not yet begun, but we need to start looking at options for having an audit of our hiring practices. So that's kind of the highlights in there, but I basically wanted to have this time for, obviously we need to still provide the board more information. It's only been a couple of weeks and we will work on gathering that, but give the board an opportunity to discuss what's here and provide any further direction if needed.
Okay. Board members, any comments about what has been provided?
I would like to see us contact both companies and account manager to get an idea of what it would cost for, a turnaround. Just in working in conjunction with our council and HR as to whether or not either the two companies that were suggested as FCRA compliant, typically, in my experience, what happens is you contact an account manager, they hear what your needs are, and then they develop some pricing. And so that would be, HireRight used to be a part of Kroll, and another company called Background America. They have had a long-standing presence in the industry, and Good Hire is also well-known. And trustees, what I did put in there, and I compared this to what I thought, I did ask somebody who's done these things a little bit more recently, and what you need to do in terms of hiring, if you're going to consider a background investigation for hiring, it has to be in compliance with the Fair Credit Reporting Act. And if you are not in compliance, and let's say it's super cheap to do the 199 searches online, and very quick, you cannot use those in a employment determination. And if you are using those, you can be really hit for bad things. You get spanked, you don't want it, that. Like maybe triple damages, you don't want that. So, but the background is about 15 to 20 is probably in the neighborhood, but that could change depending on volume. And we may have enough each month that would trigger some sort of discount. Additionally, there is a parent in the district. He's a retired FBI agent. I have his name in the packet. He has offered to meet with us and consult on this issue free of charge. He's obviously has a vested interest with his child, but also in the community. He says sometimes what he's seen is that employers can make very simple changes to applications to facilitate the process, and I have no financial ties to this retired agent. And I do believe that he's extremely qualified. Prior to his experience with the FBI, he was an attorney. He is also a certified Title IX investigator. And that's basically what I came up with. If anybody has any questions.
My questions would just be related to the cost and just get an idea what we're looking at there. Realizing it's only been 2 weeks and a busy 2 weeks at that. You know, I think that would be good to get that information for our evaluation. I'm concerned of the amount of time that in money we're spending in people cost right now doing these different background investigations and you know, checking all the different Google and repositories and all those sorts of things, that I think we could minimize some of that cost that would offset the actual cost of doing it, and probably just increase the efficiency and probably the accuracy of the information we're getting, I would hope.
Yeah, we certainly could gather information and put it in some sort of grid with different, you know, different companies and what their costs would be. We'll probably shortly have more detailed information on the LiveScan machine, and we'll have some information on that and put some cost estimates together and bring that back to the board.
Dr. Cottle, while I could have reached out to HireRight and Good Hire for a little bit more information, I was a little uncomfortable doing that because as a board member, I didn't want it perceived as though I had some acting agency authority and felt like it was best coming through the HR department and you as acting superintendent. So.
Thanks.
I still think the LiveScan is a good idea, and at that cost, I would give it strong consideration.
I guess I'm getting feedback here, right? Is that why Yes, that's why I was unplugged when I got up and left the room. I don't have a problem. I think that we should, if we have a parent with this kind of expertise, I would like to see us use that person. I do think that I also would like to see what the state is coming up with, though, too, because I think that maybe, you know, if they're going to tighten things up there in a way that it's not just us complaining. I mean, I think this came up in the legislature. I know it came up at ISBA meetings because I've attended some of those. You know, the concern about background checks across the state, or you know, how long it takes and how inaccurate and incomplete they are. So, you know, the combination of what Trustee Hazel is proposing, plus seeing what the state's coming up with through, and that Kelly can report back to us on, because we might be able to save some costs there if we, or there was a discussion about this fingerprint thing being done like regionally, right? We buy this machine or whatever and we share it with Post Falls and Lakeland or whatever. So I think we're heading the right direction here, and that's all I have to say, I guess.
Makes sense.
I think we have a lot of wheels turning right now that were not turning at all a couple of weeks ago, and they're heading in the right direction. I think we need to just kind of give it a little time to play out here.
It almost sounds like, is there possibly a four-prong sort of approach? Number one, we get an idea of actual cost through an FCRA compliant vendor. We get an idea of more information on the cross-match and the LiveScan. We take advantage of the free services offered by the retired FBI agent to take a look at what our process is and see what he would recommend. And then also we're waiting to see what the state may do as well. Is that my understanding?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, policy for information tonight. We have two policies. First one I think we'll do is, why don't we do 7215 first, which is the financial management policy. Are you ready for that, Brian?
I'm ready.
So let's hear about that first, please. Or are you handling that one?
Yeah, I'm handling that one. So that policy was part of the whole 7,000 series that we've been working on as the next series of policies to move to the ISBA model. And we actually reviewed this policy with Trustee Pickford, along with all the other 7,000 series. After having conversations with bond counsel and our financial advisor, it is recommended that this policy, which deals with our minimum fund balance that the rating agencies look at very closely, that we have, at least for your first view, that we don't need to go past our process as far as having it first for the information, then adopting it at the next meeting. So this is a first reading, but it would be helpful to be able to say to Moody's with fidelity that yes, we're adopting this policy with these changes and moving forward. Sorry. And so much of the changes are really just related to some language that ISBA recommended regarding GASB. And so it's boilerplate and it's just recommended language on how we do our accounting with governmental funds. The one change that is different for specifically regarding our minimum fund balance is our old policy had that we put 4% to unappropriated and 1% to contingency reserves. There are two lines in the budgets. We just tried to simplify that and said that we're going to have a 5% minimum fund balance, so the 4 and the 1 together, and that we would report that on the contingency reserve line so the board can see that. And so really we're keeping the same levels, and that's the major change. We also listed as a maximum fund balance of where the district would look at one-time expenses at 16%. The reason we use that number is because that number is what is recommended by our auditors. Last time Chris Shipley presented here to the board, they recommended that in a perfect world that a district would have a 16% fund balance. Not sure if we'd ever really get there, but that was a recommendation. We thought that the policy should be in line, at least on the top side, with what is recommended by the auditors and really sort of a national standard. And those standards differ from state to state. In many ways, in Idaho, we can hold a little bit of lower fund balance because of the way the state funds us. They front fund us up front, which a lot of states don't. So for cash flow, the state is very helpful in their funding formula for the school districts. Actually, one of the really positives of the funding formula in Idaho, as opposed to like when I was in Washington, it was not that way. They gave you little chunks throughout the year. So this is just for your review to take a look at, ask questions, and it'll be back your way in June, hopefully for approval with any edits that you might recommend.
Recommend this. I'm looking at this line, is 16% fund balance? That's kind of...
That's 2 months is all that is, 2 months of expenditures. So that's what I believe when Chris Shipley was here, that's a standard recommendation of public agencies and school districts across the nation to have a 16% unappropriated fund balance or minimum.
Never been anywhere near there, right?
No. But when we had our highest fund balance, if I'd have to take a look back, when we had that fund balance up at 7 million, that was in double digits for sure. May not have been 16, but I bet you it's 12, 13. I'd have to look back and do the calculation.
I appreciate that you've combined the two, because I know that's at budget time, that's often been an area of confusion just around that and what's this one for and what's that one for. So I think simplifying it makes sense there.
Agree.
Okay. Any other comments on this one? Okay, so the other policy for information tonight is 2630. which is a new policy we looked at several months ago. We looked at an ISBA version of this and had some discussions. Mr. Hearn has a rewrite of it that's in the packet today. Dr. Cottle, Mr. Hearn, who's
Well, I'll start out, kind of go through the timeline, because there are 3 documents in here, and then we'll let Trustee Hearn speak to his document. Originally, the ISBA model policy was presented in 2014 for a rewrite. The board in 2014, March, did not adopt the policy, but it did become a topic of our discussion starting at the workshop this past January. The first draft went out for information in February, and we had public comments from February 7th through March 20th, and there was one comment. And you'll see that in your packet. The policy went for action on March 6th. Then it was put on hold again for additional work. And so that's why we're talking about it today. So you'll see 3 documents in there. Document 1 is the second draft changes redlined with the original ISBA model. Document 2 is the second draft changes that were redlined with the March 6th first draft document. And then you'll see a clean copy of that third document, which is being proposed by Trustee Hearn.
Can I just clarify real quick with you, just so I understand correctly? So document 1 was the original draft that administration brought forward that was the ISBA version with some admin rewrites. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. And then document 2 is that document with some tweaking that Trustee Hearn did. Is that correct?
Document 3, I believe, is Trustee Hearn's. Is that right?
I think it's 2 and 3. 3 is just a clean version of document 2 without all the red lines, I think.
Gotcha. Yes.
Okay. Trustee Hearn, I know it's been a little while since we did this. We were going to talk about it, I think, at April, and revamped our meeting a little bit there. So
I just have a few comments, but really probably not as many comments as you think I'm going to have. You know, this issue to me is just something I've really kind of churned over. You know, this was first brought forth last fall, and at least my son-in-law came to the board. So to me, this question is what's motivating me. Is the question of whether or not we, how specific do we want to be in requiring homework, you know, and you know, there's a dilemma between, you know, us setting certain standards and guidelines versus telling professionals what to do, right? I mean, that's what the wording that I changed, to me, was so general, it didn't really tell the professionals anything. I mean, basically said they could do what they wanted to do. I think, well, maybe that's the way it should be. If that's what the board thinks, fine. But then I also felt that, you know, maybe we should have, and my whole motivation of this thing is upping our game in terms of our academic improvement. I just think about schools that are successful, and I'm not an expert in this. I don't claim to be. A lot of schools require homework, at least in core classes. They require it. You know, they expect that. You know, I'm not comfortable with saying that's not required. So all I put in here was that, you know, and as I said this months ago, is that maybe the default position should be that we have homework, and that if a professional educator has reasons for not doing this, that they should be able to justify it. They should provide a professional rationale for it. That's what I said for, you know, if requested by the building administrator or parent or teacher, you know, teacher should be able to provide a professional rationale for not assigning homework. Such rationale needs to be consistent with the school district's mission of promoting high academic standards. That was my wording. That's nobody else's wording. That's what I came up with. And I know that some of the teachers probably don't agree with this, and I'm sure Mr. Close will speak to this issue. But I'm just trying to. So I guess what I'm saying is I'm not hung up on the wording, but I am hung up on the discussion. I am hung up on that we discuss this issue as to what is the proper role of the board in relation to this homework issue. And maybe it's what I'm suggesting, maybe it's less than what I'm suggesting. I can live with that. But I do think we should have the discussion. I'm not comfortable the way it was before, where it was not, in my opinion, not specific enough, not strong enough. I guess that's my word. That's, I can say more, but Mr. Colas probably has something to say.
Real quick, before Mr. Cole speaks, I think that I may have misspoke on the packet. So I don't think the original version we saw is in the packet.
I'm looking at this.
Right, because they look, 1, 2, and 3 all look very similar.
Right. I don't think the original is there.
Right. So just to correct that, we don't have the original version in front of us. Mr. Colas, go ahead, sir.
I have the original version, but you don't have it in the packet.
Thank you for indulging me. I've been reading over the different versions, and I'm not sure that I've got them clearly in my head. But the version that Trustee Hearn just read sounded like it allowed parents to give teachers homework in terms of justifying what they were doing in the classroom or not doing in the classroom. I would take issue with that as a professional.
What was the parents giving teachers homework?
If a teacher or an administrator wanted a rationale, the teacher, based on the language you read, would have to provide a rationale for why they're doing what they're doing in their classroom.
I have a problem with not providing. I mean, teachers should be able to provide rationale for everything they're doing.
That is true, not necessarily to any parent that asks for it.
The question would be,
professionals have rationales for what we do.
Okay, so what's the problem? Well, if we took the word parent out,
I just wanted to raise the issue that is the way the language could be interpreted, so that a parent could read that and say, oh, now I can ask every day for the teacher to provide a rationale for why they're doing this.
Well, I don't. Okay, maybe obviously, as I said before, I'm not hung up on the wording, I'm hung up on the discussion. I don't have a problem, maybe the word parent should be taken out of there, but the idea is that, I guess I go back to we all make decisions based on our own experience, okay? When I owned a mental health clinic, and if I made a diagnosis of somebody, I needed to provide a rationale as to why I made that diagnosis and why I had a certain treatment plan recommendation. I should be able to defend that with my colleagues, with the client's family, and sometimes with the courts, if it got that, if there was an issue. So I need to provide a rationale for what I'm doing, or not doing, because sometimes you get you get questioned for not doing certain things. You get questioned for what you do, and you get questioned for not doing. That was my experience based on my years of working in mental health. Is you should be able to provide a rationale for what you're doing. So then I kind of had that concept in my head, and I think, okay, well then the teachers should be able to provide a rationale for using homework or not using homework. If they choose not to use homework, then they should be able to hopefully fairly easily defend that. And I said consistent with promoting high academic standards, our policy. So that's where I'm coming from on this. That's I don't have any other agenda than that. I want us to have, like everybody else at this table, we want to have the highest standards. How do we get there? Is homework in the core classes, should we expect that? I kind of think we should, but I'm one of 5. And if we're not, then how's a teacher, then that's fine. If that's what the board thinks, fine. But if a teacher's not going to do it, I think a teacher should say, well, I'm not going to give homework on this particular subject this year because blah, 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 blah. And they can defend it. Not just because I don't feel like doing it or whatever. And I know I'm getting into the issue of, and this is this dilemma we have a lot on the board, at least I have a lot on the board, where's my role as a trustee, setting policy, and how much do I depend on the expertise of our professional staff? I struggle with that all the time. And I think that's kind of a lot of our decisions are in that, right? We set certain standards, and we listen to our professionals, but we are the ones that draw the standards based on our elected position and based on our best knowledge we have. Although I'm no expert in education, I've certainly learned a lot in the last 4 years, but I'm certainly no expert on this. But I do think it's something we should discuss. So I'd be interested what other trustees would have to say.
I'm really getting into this. We've got a couple of real critical issues that we need to deal with as a district, and we talked a lot about math earlier. I'm wondering how we really make some great strides forward in math education if homework is just something that's hardly even on the radar. I've really been pushing increasing and improving literacy among little kids. I'm looking at doing it by any means necessary, whatever it takes. I don't think that we should write out homework or just write it off the assignments. I mean, I think there needs to be, I don't have a problem with homework at all. And I've told you before that when I taught Spanish, and Mike Nelson will probably agree with this, I had homework almost every single night because that's what it took to get them through the course successfully. But when I taught woodshop, it was not, I could give a rationale for not giving homework in woodshop. I do think that we need to not close the door on some of these strategies, okay? And so far as asking teachers to explain what they're doing and why they're doing it, I don't have the least problem with that. And I've had parents come to me many times over the years wanting to know what I'm doing and why, and I'm going to explain it to them, even if I need to do it every day. But I will explain it to them. I don't have a problem with that. So, Mr. Hearn, I think I like your paragraph or two there. I'm okay with that.
For this discussion, I wish I had that original, not the original, but the version we looked at a few months ago.
Well,
probably. My concern, I didn't have a problem with the one we looked at in March. My concern with some of the rewrites is they just seem a little heavy-handed or a little. I don't like that you must provide a rationale or you somehow have to justify that. I guess the question is, in secondary, is that a large problem that we're seeing that homework isn't being assigned?
It's a different issue. It's a different issue. In my experience, this kind of segues into one of my concerns, which is the least concern I have is in our elementary buildings. The bigger concern I have is in the secondary levels. And it's not a matter of giving homework, it's a matter of giving multiple chances to get the grade you want. Right, it's the redo policy of homework that I don't know is working as well for us as, even tonight we saw 80% of, what was the figure? Dr. Cottle was 80% of some kids that would get C or better, but then we'd really drop down into the actual testing score. And it's one of those things that, as I tell my kids, as long as there's a redo policy, you just keep redoing until you get a grade that makes mama happy. And they do, and it helps. But I don't know that it helps them during testing. It helps them with confidence. I've seen some phenomenal teachers who teach without assigning very much homework because they are so phenomenal and efficient and professional in the classroom. They get the job done. Is every teacher that way? Maybe, maybe not. I wouldn't know. I guess I would trust the elementary staff and the building principal that if the expectation is clearly presented from the board and from administration, that those building principals would handle it. Now that's mainly with the primary grades. The secondary with the homework discussion is almost its own different animal entirely. So I don't want to bog that down with this policy.
You notice I didn't put elementary in there. I purposely said middle and high school.
I do, but we haven't even approached as a board the discussion of secondary homework. And what I'm telling you is it feels like a different animal as a parent from where I sit. It's just kind of a different animal. So, here we're talking about one assignment, and you need to have an assignment. And, I don't know that every classroom has redo policies. I have a little bit of issue with, I can see why Mr. Colas has an issue with the provide a rationale. I think, Trustee Hearn, it seems like my interpretation or impression of your concerns have been they just need to be able to defend it. But my concern is do they need to defend it to every parent, or do they need to be able to defend it or articulate it or talk about it in advance with their building principal, just so, in the event that there's an issue through the school year.
I was thinking more in terms of their syllabus or with their building administrator. I don't know how it is there, but I remember when I used to take classes at the beginning of the year or the beginning of the semester, whatever it was, you get an outline about what you're going to do, and then there would be a statement in there about what their homework is going to be, and that's a rationale. They can defend it, how they're going to use homework there or not use homework. I guess that's the issue.
Okay.
And I would agree with Trustee Hazel. The secondary homework and being able to repeat it for a grade really kind of is a different animal. It's more about grading practices and less really about homework itself, because there's also the opportunity in some classrooms to retest. And so I would agree that would be kind of a different issue to tackle.
Dr. Cottle, were you involved in the discussion, the rewrite of the policy that we saw before? Because there was how the sequence of events was. At least originally we took the policy from Lakeland School District, right? And then there was also ISBA's version anyway. The administration came up with their own version, which I thought was pretty watered down. That was my interpretation of it. So I guess I'm asking is for maybe not necessarily tonight. We don't have to resolve this issue tonight, but some clear understanding from the thinking behind the administrators or teachers who came up with the policy that was presented to the board before, because and it had a lot. The wording I have some of that, and it was a lot more general.
It's my understanding
if
that
assigned, blah,
sorry.
blah, blah,
Yeah, that was
all
loud.
That. If homework, if assigned, I don't know.
Yeah, can I say something here? We're just rambling all over the place. The audience doesn't know this, but we've been sitting here for 4 hours. And this is just so unproductive. Can we have a conversation like this a little earlier in the meeting? I mean, we've been doing this the last few meetings, and it's like, I just get to the point where I don't care. Okay? So just my opinion, sorry.
And I'm okay with tabling this, and then maybe something we could do, just a suggestion, maybe we could table this, and we could have, at the next meeting, or the next time we discuss this, what I drew, plus what was originally presented by the board, side by side, or by the administration, side by side.
Yeah,
right? And then we have that comparison you're asking for, Chair.
Listeners,
Easy.
whatever you're calling yourself these days.
The boss. Maybe we'll have there'll be a much cleaner comparison here.
This is just information, though.
Right.
Right, and we seem to be continuing with the homework policy. I've read it all the times it's been put forward to us, and my mind hasn't changed on how I feel about the homework policy. I'm not sure we're in need of a homework policy. I feel we have wonderful professionals in our classrooms, and leaving it up to them on the homework that they send home for our students. I see my child at the high school level, always she's in Spanish 4. She's never not studying Spanish. She's never not have any homework for math in those classes, those core classes. So I just think that in a class like her student council class, she wouldn't be coming home with homework, but she has stuff that she has to do in the community. So I think each class is different. Each teacher is different. So in my opinion hasn't changed with regards to homework and leaving it in the hands of our professionals.
I understand. Again, I use the word core academic classes. I wasn't talking about any electives or student council or any of that kind of stuff. I was talking
Her
about
core academic classes, she is having homework nonstop. Her English class, she writes at least an essay a week. She is not lacking in the homework department.
So if a teacher decided not to do homework for a core class like that, wouldn't you want to know why?
I haven't met a teacher that wouldn't provide homework in a core class.
Let's move on, and let's bring this back for discussion down the road.
I'm fine with that. I'm more interested in the discussion than hung up on these particular words.
Okay.
So maybe we can do a cleaner comparison next time with what the administration came up with and what I came up with. That's fine with me.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Hearn. Finally. So, action item we have is our bond resolution that was in our packet. Poor Danielle's been here for 3.5 hours. Luckily, we're not paying her by the hour. I did confirm that during our break.
We need to handle this in a different way. We've tortured this poor lady, right?
I did say at least I have kids in the district, so the items you're discussing are of interest to me. Well, thank you, Chair Morshrow and members of the board. We are here to take the next step on the bonds. A couple of weeks ago at your workshop, Mr. Herringer from Piper Jaffray was here to share with you the kind of financial process that we're moving through. And this document that you have before you today is the legal piece to keep that process moving forward to get you to that dollars in the bank in the middle of June. So this is a bond resolution. It looks very similar to the bond resolution that we adopted in 2012. And I was just going to take a couple of minutes and walk through some material provisions, but stop me if you have any questions or if you want to focus on a specific area, I'd be happy to do that. So I'd like to start by pointing out just on page 1 of the resolution is the question that was approved by the voters of our district with a huge level of support. And I just noted that when you were having a discussion about the Hayden site, we did provide you additional flexibility in this question to be able to spend proceeds on financing schools and school facilities, including but not limited to the projects that were outlined therein. So you do have some flexibility there. You obviously have a limitation of dollars, right? So if you spend them on the Hayden site, then you don't have them to spend on these other projects. But you do have flexibility, especially in the event that some of your bidding comes in low, which we always hope and sometimes does happen. We always want to make sure that the districts have that ability to spend it on relevant facilities and projects. So the next section I would call your attention to is section 2.8, and there's a lot of authorizations in there, and that's really the meat of what you're doing today. So the first thing that you're doing is authorizing us to proceed with a competitive sale. Eric talked about the difference between a negotiated and a competitive sale. So you have selected to go with a competitive sale, which is where we provide the notice of sale and the offering document to the public. They do it through a website that's called Parity. Eric, I asked him questions about that today. And Eric said that that's the site that's used universally by underwriters for these types of school district competitive sales, and he recommended that the board use that system. But what that does is they post the information, they give a strict deadline. Everybody who wants to submit a bid to purchase the bonds pursuant to the terms that are developed and shared by Piper Jaffray then submits a bid by that time, and then the system automatically calculates the winning bidder, so the lowest interest cost with lowest fees, et cetera. And then Eric's firm does a check of that. So we'll know with double certainty that you got the best possible bid that you can get. So that's under sub A. D talks about the electronic bidding system. E talks about the approval of the preliminary official statement. That is the big, huge document that Lynn sent you that has the disclosure about the district, about our, financial position, about the tax base, all of the information that's relative to potential investors. And I believe Lynn included this in the email, but we would like you to take a look at the information specifically related to the district and provide us any comments you have by May 9th. That really is, it's drafted by Piper Jaffray, and we certainly review it, but it is an issuer document. It is a district document, and you have an obligation to make sure that there aren't material omissions or material misstatements in that document. So we like to really remind the board of that. Obviously, you don't have to read the stuff about the redemption provisions. We're going to make sure that's right. It's really the stuff about the district that you would know, that I wouldn't know, and Piper wouldn't know. So moving on, just in terms of the schedule, so we need those comments by the 9th, because we'll post that offering document on the 15th, and then the intent is to actually take the bonds to the market on May 25th. On that date, this resolution contemplates that you delegate the authority to your chairman and in connection with Brian to approve the actual pricing information, which includes the interest rate. And I'll cover that a little bit more in just a second. But I also wanted to call out that you're also approving the information reporting agreement, which is an exhibit and was sent to you separately, which is your contract to provide ongoing disclosure to the market. You're already doing that with the 2012 bonds, but it's very important to the SEC and to the secondary trading market that they know how your financials look, not just this year when they buy the bonds, but in the future. So turning to Section 209, that is where that's what's actually being delegated to your chair and to Brian. If you look at 1, they're allowed to approve an interest rate up to 4%. Eric talked about that 4% would still keep you well within that levy commitment that you made to your voters. And if something were to change there, he would certainly raise the red flag and say, hey, this is gonna increase the levy rate more than we contemplated. My understanding is the rates are moving down, so that's good. Obviously, we have to stay under that $35.5 million election approval. We have to stay under the max term of 15 years, and then they would be able to approve a redemption schedule, including the ability to redeem the bonds early. Typically, that's done only at the 10-year point because people want to invest in those bonds for the long term. So for the first 10 years, they're not subject to redemption. Okay. Moving on. Tell me to go quicker if you need me to. 213, I just wanted to point out that the bond levy subsidy is something that you pledge in addition to your tax revenues. So Coeur d'Alene gets a 10% bond levy interest rate subsidy, which is great. And when you receive that, you pledge that you're going to deposit that into the bond fund and utilize it to pay the bonds. Under Section 501, that's where you covenant to levy the amount of taxes that you need to repay the debt, and that's an unlimited pledge. You have to levy what you need minus other funds that you have to repay the bonds, and the bonds those proceeds have to go into a separate bond fund. You've seen over the last few years that some districts have had trouble with borrowing from their bond funds. That happened down in Nampa. It's happened in a couple of other districts as well. As we all know, it gets thin at the end of the fiscal year for school districts based on your funding mechanisms. And when everything's kept together, there's the temptation to be like, oh, we have cash, we'll spend it here because we're going to get our tax payment in July. And the rating agencies do not like that. That's why we're actually working on a procedure with Katie and Brian so that those funds would be kept totally separately, and they're already accounted for separately. You guys are doing a great job of that, but just something important to note and something that the rating agencies have really been focusing on. The tax covenants. As you know, these are tax-exempt bonds. Generally, schools don't have trouble with the tax covenants, which is that you use the bond proceeds for qualified governmental projects. But some areas that I just want to put in your mind, just for, as you're considering future contracts and stuff, the ways that I've seen this get tripped up, and you do have a 10% allowance. So you can have a small portion of the projects be utilized for private purposes. But, sometimes you're starting to see for-profit, like Starbucks kind of stuff in high schools. That would be a private use. It's probably small enough that it wouldn't be material, but you need to make sure. Cleaning service contracts, nutrition service contracts, and facilities that are bond financed. And one that I thought might be material in this case is that a lease of land. So say you bought land for a future elementary school, you can't lease it back to the farmer to use it for farming in the interim. You have to use it for governmental purposes. That would be considered bad use. So any questions on that? It's pretty straightforward with schools. The last thing I just want to point out is Section 505 talks about the investment of funds. Eric's been working with Brian on that. You really only can invest in direct federally guaranteed investments per the state law, but there are options that generally have a better rate of return than what you're going to get by just staying in the state pool. So that's my little spiel. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
I couldn't find where the resolution is or where the motion is. Does somebody have
I
a
have the
copy of the
motion.
magic words?
I do.
Okay. I am not trying to speed things up,
but you are.
Trustee Eubanks might want to, so.
Go for it.
Okay, so the motion for consideration is, let's see. So motion would be to approve resolution 16-17-007, authorizing the issuance and providing for the sale of general obligation bonds, Series 2017, of the school district number 271, Kootenai County, State of Idaho, delegating authority to approve the terms and provisions of the bond, authorizing advertisement for competitive sale of the bonds, and providing for related matters.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank
Thank
you.
you.
And sorry.
We look forward to working with you, Chair, on the process for the pricing of the bonds. It's actually kind of fun to see how it progresses, see the bids come in and get to compare them to each other and stuff. So we'll be in contact about that.
Okay.
Good night, guys.
Thank you.
Night.
Bye-bye.
We gotta remember to put that kind of stuff at the beginning.
Yes. Oh, boy.
When we have outside presenters like that. We didn't catch that on last week, Dave.
I know.
Okay. Ms. Town, you have the next item, which is our candidate declarations.
That's going on 9 o'clock.
Well, thank you. It seems that we have passed the time that declarations of candidacy were due. That time has now expired. We've got one qualified candidate nominated for the position of trustees for zones 1, 4, and 5. Therefore, I would ask that the board make a motion. Does anyone want to take it?
I move to authorize the clerk to declare Lisa May as the elected trustee in Zone 1, Dave Eubanks as the elected trustee in Zone 4.
I don't know.
Yeah, you're it. And Tom Hearn as the elected trustee in Zone 5, and to provide each candidate with a certificate of election.
So moved. Or you made that.
I moved. You
Second.
need a second. Now we can open up for discussion if Trustee Eubanks would like to argue.
I'm too tired to argue.
That's why we put
Let's
this at
just
the
get
end.
it done.
Yeah. Give him his certificate.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay.
You win.
Okay. A couple things to just wrap up here. So the committee reports. Oh, sorry. I crossed it off. Sorry. Dr. Nelson, novel recommendations.
You
We
crossed
have grade
it off?
11, Into the Wild, and grade 12, second treatise on government.
Yes,
Yes.
I make a motion to approve the novels titles as presented for whole group instruction at the grade levels indicated.
So moved. Second.
Aye.
Whatever. On aye.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank
you, Mike.
We got delirious there. Okay, so we've got a workshop scheduled for May 15th. We're going to talk budget, and we're going to talk the policy section 7000. Okay,
Can't wait.
meeting adjourned.
Whoa. Thank you.